those years as a superhero in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 751. You forced me to do this. Tony grabbed Lee G's collar, demanding that he hand over Bucky, and wanted to kill Bucky. This situation was not unexpected by Lee G. The hatred of killing parents can make people angry and do all kinds of things. If Lee G changes his mind, he will probably do the same if he puts himself in Tony's shoes. In fact, Lee G had already done a lot of psychological construction for Tony in the previous conversation. Tony actually guessed what Lee G wanted to say. But knowing is one thing, and confirming is another. Tony didn't want to hear this news. He grabbed Lee G's collar tightly, and Lee G didn't push Tony away. Because he knew that he needed to give Tony an outlet to vent his anger and pressure. And he and Rogers naturally couldn't escape. Or Captain Rogers will be Tony's main target of venting later. As Lee G guessed, when Tony was holding Lee G's collar tightly, Rogers came up to help. He pulled Tony away and said, Tony, calm down, calm down. Rogers was much stronger than Tony, at least as strong as 10 Tonys working together. This made Tony easily pulled away by Rogers. Rogers' actions aggravated Tony's anger. Tony was now like an angry leopard. He looked at Rogers with gritted teeth. Calm down. Yes, calm down. Because it wasn't your parents who died. No, that's not the case. Rogers defended himself somewhat weakly. I'm sorry about what happened to the Howards. You have to believe me, Howard and I are also good friends. He gave me selfless help during those difficult years and helped me through various difficulties. Believe me, my feelings for Howard are no less than yours, Tony. Haha. Tony's mouth twitched and he laughed. But this smile was just a gesture, not that he was really happy. He stared at Rogers. Okay, then prove it to me, Captain. If you really think my father is your best friend. Now that we know who killed him, what should we do? This sentence put Rogers in a dilemma, because it is not difficult to know from what Lee G just revealed. All these conflicts are caused by Bucky. And Bucky Rogers' friend is a real childhood friend. The two grew up together, went to school together, skipped classes together, and went to peek at the girl in the factory next door together. Later, they joined the army together and went through life and death together. The depth of this kind of emotion is difficult to understand for people who have not experienced these things. Bucky is not a simple friend to Rogers, but a real brother, his only relative in the world now. If what Lee G said is true, and Bucky is still alive, Rogers really can't bear to watch his friend die. Even Captain America, a superhero known for his uprightness, is in a dilemma at this time. Because in the final analysis, Rogers is still a person with feelings, not a cold-blooded machine. Tony pouted at Rogers, who looked a little guilty, and then looked at Lee G. What did the murderer say? Where is he? Lee G patted Captain Rogers on the shoulder to calm him down. In fact, Bucky confessed to his crimes. He clearly remembers what he did. No. Rogers almost wailed. And Tony's face couldn't stop eating. So when I was talking to him, Bucky told me that he was willing to take responsibility for his crimes. This includes the death penalty. Of course he hopes not to go to the electric chair. Other than that, he can accept any form of death penalty. Lee G said what Bucky said that day. Tony smiled softly, not knowing what exactly his smile meant. Very good, it seems that he is still a man who dares to take responsibility for his actions. I can help him by injecting him to death. This is the most painless way to die. I can prepare a drug that will make him completely brain dead in 5/1000 seconds. This is almost the same as falling asleep. This is my tribute to his courage to take responsibility for his actions. No. Rogers wailed again in a low voice. Tony, you just heard it. Everything Bucky did at that time was not his own idea. He was controlled by someone, and you can't put all the blame on him. Tony avoided Captain Rogers, who wanted to get close to him. He just said in a cold tone, but this can't change what he did. It's basic to take responsibility for what you have done. Captain, do you want him to be acquitted? Tony was already blinded by anger, and now he only thought about revenge. Everything else was no longer within his consideration. If Tony and Rogers continued to quarrel like this, no matter what the final result would be, whether Bucky is dead or alive, there will be a gap between the two. This is what Lee G did not expect. He found the Winter Soldier to avoid the escalation of the whole thing. Quiet down, gentlemen. Your quarrel is not helpful to solve this problem. Luigi separated Rogers and Tony, who were arguing, and forced the two to sit down. Listen, whether you want Bucky to die or live, all this needs me to deal with it, okay? He is in my hands. If I don't agree, then your quarrel is meaningless, okay? Luigi just finished speaking and found that the eyes of the two were staring at him. Well, Luigi doesn't like this kind of thing that actively attracts hatred for himself. He usually throws the pot in hatred to others. But now he has to do this. Because only in this way can the opposition between the two be temporarily eased and an irreconcilable contradiction be avoided. Although a lot of psychological construction has been done for the two before. But the words Luigi said were still a bit earth-shattering, so the effect of psychological construction was not obvious. Both of them have a tendency to let their emotions overwhelm their rationality. Luigi has to find a way to calm them down first. Only in this way can they really sit down and talk. When Luigi was thinking about how to calm them down first, Tony growled at Luigi a little irritably, "So you also think Bucky should be acquitted? You also said that he is an executioner with blood on his hands. His past honors cannot wash away the sins he has committed now." Rogers didn't like Tony's argument. He whispered back, "But everything Bucky does now is controlled by others. His personality is not a dominant factor. The lack of personality is difficult to convict." Tony was instantly angry. "So you mean that mentally ill people are not guilty of killing and injuring people?" Rogers responded, "From various cases, it is indeed the case. Mental patients are at most admitted to mental hospitals. They cannot be punished by criminal law because they lack the ability to control themselves. Bucky is worse than them. He is completely deprived of the ability to control himself." Bang! Tony punched Rogers hard on the chin. "You are making up a story." Rogers did not dodge Tony's fist, and it seemed that he took Tony's punch on purpose. "If you think beating me up will make you feel better, then go ahead." Rogers faced Tony's eyes and fist calmly. "It won't hurt if he doesn't wear the Iron Man armor anyway, that's what you said. If you insist on defending your murderer friend, then I can only greet you with my fist first." Tony seemed to be really not going to be polite with Captain Rogers. "Huh?" Luigi exhaled. Well, things have come to this point. He knew that he had no choice. First, let these two people who were overwhelmed by emotions regain their rationality before discussing this matter. Luigi decided to use the last plan. He didn't really want to use this plan, because this would attract a lot of hatred for himself after this matter was over, but things had come to this point and he had to do it. "Well, you guys forced me to do this." Luigi looked at Rogers and Tony, who were fighting each other. Tony was the one fighting, Rogers was just defending at most. Rogers felt that Tony's physical strength would not be able to hold up for long. Luigi silently took out a helmet that he had prepared long ago from his belt and put it on himself, the mental protection helmet from Magneto, and at the same time a small gem box was taken out. "You two, can you stop and look at me first?" Luigi shouted at the two. Tony and Rogers subconsciously turned back to look at Luigi, and the small gem box in Luigi's hand was opened, and the purple light filled the whole room. In an instant, a cheerful melody sounded in Tony and Rogers' minds. "You are my little apple, I can never love you enough. Your red little face warms my heart and lights up the fire of my life. Fire, 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 fire." Although they didn't know what the lyrics were singing, the rhythmic music still made people want to dance. The originally tense meeting room suddenly became a happy scene of singing and dancing. Only Luigi shook his head with a bitter face. "I hope they won't beat me too hard after they regain their senses. P.S. Please vote at the beginning of the month." Chapter 752, When the Playboy Has a Family. I don't know how long it took, but when Rogers and Tony came to their senses, they felt that they were almost exhausted. Tony's physical strength is relatively poor. Although he consciously exercised his body and practiced fighting after the kidnapping in Afghanistan, he is still just an average person whose bench press weight cannot exceed 75 kilograms, connecting rod. This is because he has a lot of time and money to invest in fitness. Otherwise, his level may be even worse. You have to know that his alcoholism and excessive indulgence in women in his early years almost drained his body. Especially alcohol dependence is a very fatal disease, and its harm is not much better than drug dependence. So Tony was the first to collapse. Luigi saw that he was almost done and simply knocked Tony out. Captain Rogers has super physical strength, And Lee Ji was too lazy to count the time to see how long Captain Rogers can jump. Anyway, he has prepared 2 mobile phones and 4 30,000 mAh power banks. After playing Soul Knight for who knows how long, Lee Ji felt his neck was almost stiff before he looked up at Captain Rogers. Well, very good, the dance is very rhythmic and full of rhythm. However, Captain Rogers' heavy breathing already knew that he was almost at his limit. Lee Ji packed up his things, and after getting ready, he put away the dance gem. The purple light was once again gathered in the gem box. Captain Rogers, who was still dancing, finally collapsed to the ground. Speaking of which, Captain Rogers' endurance is really excellent. Lee Ji used this to deal with Spider-Man once before. Note, Peter stuffed the clothes that had entered the sewer directly into the washing machine, causing the washing machine to have a terrible odor, and finally had to throw them away and replace them with new ones. After being bitten by the mutant spider, Spider-Man's strength is very good and his endurance is also very good. It can be said that he is much stronger than Rogers in terms of physical strength, but Rogers' endurance does not seem to be much worse than Peter. Maybe willpower can also affect endurance? Lee Ji can only think so. When Tony and Captain Rogers, who were almost exhausted, recovered, they found themselves lying on a sofa. In front of the sofa, Lee Ji was sitting on a chair and yawning. Lee Ji slapped his mouth, yawning, and felt much better. He saw that the two had opened their eyes, so he took the functional drinks that had been prepared long ago from the table and said to them, "Monster or Red Bull?" If ice could kill, Tony and Rogers would have killed Lee Ji countless times. But the reality is that the two now don't even have the strength to lift their eyelids. Tony said weakly, "I want Monster." Captain Rogers couldn't help coughing, as if his throat was stuck. After breathing smoothly, he said, "I want Monster too." Lee Ji nodded and handed the drinks to the two. Tony glanced at the bottle and curled his lips. He wanted to make an angry expression, but the angry expression was too tiring. Tony now felt that life was better to be relaxed, so he asked calmly, "Did you do that on purpose?" "What?" Lee Ji pretended not to understand. Tony pushed the bottle cap with his mouth. "Do you think I still have the strength to open the bottle cap now?" Tony now really felt that his fingers were trembling, and this time he was almost exhausted. He didn't even have the strength to secrete adrenaline. Rogers was in a slightly better situation. He took the 2 bottles of drinks from Lee Ji, opened the bottle caps and handed one to Tony. Tony took a look at the bottle with a complicated expression, but finally took it. The two of them drank about 2.5 bottles of Monster's Claws in a row, and then they laid down for about half an hour before they felt better. After resting well, Tony and Rogers almost roared at each other at the same time. They wanted to roar loudly, but they didn't have the strength. "You will be punished." Haha. Lee Ji smiled. It seemed to attract more hatred. "Isn't this good? I saw you guys fighting so hard just now, and I thought you wanted to break up completely and never talk to each other again." Tony and Rogers looked at each other. Now the two brothers in distress were lying on a sofa because of Lee Ji's dancing gem. It was hard to stand up and move, and fighting? Impossible. It's better to drink a few more sips of beverage. Tony took a sip of the beverage and let out a long breath, then said to Lee Ji, "This is because we have a common enemy for the time being. I think you know who it is. Because of the extreme physical fatigue, you can't do it even if you want to be angry or secrete adrenaline to shock your body and brain. Because the body has activated a protection mechanism." In this case, Tony's reason was not defeated by the hot blood and anger again. He realized that everything he had just done might cause an irreversible consequence, and even lead to a split within the Illuminati. With the current power of the Illuminati, if it splits, it will become terrible, and even the whole thing will move in an unpredictable direction. Actually, Tony was still a little scared. His hands holding the drink bottle were shaking. On one hand, he was weak, and on the other hand, he was really scared. But with his arrogant personality, it was impossible for him to admit that he had just gone too far. He needed to find a way out. "You are courting death, Nightwalker. When I recover, you will be in trouble." Captain Rogers also said harsh words to Lee Ji, which was rare for Captain Rogers. Lee Ji didn't care about this threat. He just said lightly, "I have a video. If you don't want it to be leaked." Tony and Rogers. Despicable. "Okay, I think you two are calm now, so can we talk about Bucky?" After Lee Ji's series of jokes, and the two of them were seriously weak. Now the atmosphere on the scene is not as solemn as before. In fact, The two of them thought about a lot of things during the half an hour they lay on the sofa powerlessly. Luigi also saw this from some of the two people's subtle expressions, so he said, "I think our biggest dispute is whether Bucky deserves to die. As for whether he is guilty or not, I think we don't need to repeat it. He is indeed guilty, and he has admitted it himself." Captain Rogers opened his mouth to say something, but finally held back. Because he felt that he needed to take a step back at this time. Otherwise, Tony would have no way out, and there would be no way to talk about the following matters. Tony saw that Captain Rogers did not interrupt, so he did not speak. Our main problem with Bucky is how to judge this crime. From a certain perspective, he does deserve to die, based on the crime he committed. But what Captain Rogers said just now actually makes sense. Tony, you can't deny it, according to our current laws. If a person loses the ability to control himself, then all injuries caused by uncontrolled behavior can be exempted from sentencing in law. There are indeed cases of mentally ill people injuring others, and the final result is mostly imprisonment in a mental hospital. Incarceration and treatment is the majority of treatment methods for such cases. I think you are very clear about this. Tony did not reply, which was considered as tacit agreement. But he quickly said, "Do you really want to throw him to a mental hospital? I don't agree with this way of dealing with it." Luigi nodded and said with understanding, "In fact, it's not just you. To be honest, I can't accept it either. Captain, do you think Bucky should be completely innocent?" Rogers thought deeply. In fact, what Luigi said just now has diluted the main contradiction between him and Tony. That is the issue of whether Bucky lives or not. After this issue is resolved, especially Tony's attitude just now was actually a concession. Rogers felt that he had to make concessions as well. Only in this way could the team not fall apart. He replied, "Imprisonment is also a good punishment. Since he made a mistake, and Bucky himself is willing to take these responsibilities." Listening to what Rogers said, Luigi shook his head and smiled. "Actually, I have a plan about how to deal with Bucky. I think this is the most appropriate way. Bucky has agreed, and I need to ask for your opinions now." Tony and Rogers looked at each other, and then asked together, "What method?" Luigi pointed to the direction of the starport under construction outside the Venus base, just like Magneto Marx, who is working hard outside. In fact, Bucky has his own abilities that can be used. I think it's a good idea to use his abilities to make up for his mistakes. Tony frowned. "You want to recruit Bucky too?" If this is true, Tony will feel very uncomfortable. Even if he has figured out some things, it doesn't mean that he can face his father's murderer every day and still be calm. Luigi shook his head. "No, of course not. I will find a suitable person to take him in. As for this matter, I may need to confirm it before I can tell you." Tony pondered for a long time, and finally said, "Well, let's do it for my unborn child. Don't kill Bucky, just pray for the child." Tony took a sip of his drink and said this lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, he found that the whole room was terribly quiet. Luigi and Rogers looked at him in disbelief, and their eyes were bigger than light bulbs. "Why are you looking at me like that? Is it strange that I have a child?" Tony said with some hair all over his body. Rogers asked the question that Luigi wanted to ask, "Who is the mother?" "Of course it's Pepper." Tony answered without thinking, and then he suddenly realized, "Wait, what do you mean by asking this?" Chapter 753 Father, what do you think? What do you mean by that? Tony looked at Luigi and Rogers very unhappily. The two shook their heads in response to Tony's gaze. Luigi whispered, "Is it really not a blunder? Last time you said Pepper was pregnant, but it turned out to be fake news. Is it really confirmed now?" Tony curled his lips and said, "Last time it was an accident. Pregnancy test strips are sometimes inaccurate. This time I specially made a machine to do a full body check on Pepper and confirmed that she has no problems and is indeed pregnant. So my wedding with her will be moved up a little. I won't send out invitations, you can just come over when the time comes." Tony has actually obtained a marriage certificate with Pepper, but the wedding ceremony has not been held yet. Because compared to a simple matter like going to a civil affairs agency to get a certificate, preparing a wedding is much more complicated. Especially Tony wants to have a grand wedding that is worthy of Pepper. So a lot of resources need to be mobilized before and after. The wedding must be luxurious and grand. But it must also meet the requirement of being low-key. Because even thinking with your big toe knows how much attention Tony's wedding will attract. Especially those news paparazzi, they are waiting for an opportunity like vultures smelling rotten meat. Tony is very high profile in many things, but this does not mean that he likes his private life to be interfered with. Especially about extremely private things such as marriage and family. And Pepper does not want her wedding to be followed and interviewed by irrelevant people. That is too boring, and there will even be friction and conflict. Don't overestimate the moral quality of paparazzi, they can do anything for news. So Tony is about to buy a small island near New Zealand, and the wedding will be held on the island. The previous island was just a remote deserted island with no one living on it. So Tony needs to invest a sum of money to transform the entire island into a habitable one, so that the wedding can be held on it. At that time, his iron armor and Jarvis intelligence will monitor the entire island to ensure that no irrelevant people can go to the island. And this is the wedding project he prepared. Now Pepper is pregnant. If her belly gets bigger day by day, the custom-made wedding dress can't be worn. So the wedding should either be advanced or postponed. Wait until Pepper gives birth. Tony has now begun to speed up the renovation of the island, striving to complete it before Christmas. Lee Ji smiled and said, "Then congratulations." "Thank you." Tony raised the beverage bottle and responded to Lee Ji as if it were a red wine glass. To form a new family is a new experience for Tony. There is a fear and expectation. This feeling is very complicated. It is no longer a simple combination of a man and a woman. It is a new member of the family, although the child has not yet been born. But when it was confirmed that Pepper was pregnant, Tony suddenly felt that his life had been extended. A novel feeling, although he did not really see the baby still in Pepper's body, Tony suddenly had a feeling that he was willing to do everything for this unborn child. Of course, Lee Ji and Rogers were not surprised by Pepper's pregnancy. The only thing they found strange was that Tony's life became dissolute since he lost his parents at the age of 16 or 17. There has never been any news of illegitimate children in all these years. Is there really no girl who wants to tie Tony down with a child? Well, to put it bluntly, even if Tony can't be tied down, just for the high annual child support, there will still be many women who want to have Tony's child. Some people will do anything for money. And this is what Lee Ji and Rogers wondered. Rogers really wanted to ask Tony, "Didn't you get sterilized?" But at this happy moment, Rogers could only smile with his lips pursed. Although the captain is a straightforward boy, it doesn't mean he is a fool, okay? Tony took a sip of the drink and didn't care about the two people's gazes. His thoughts were all transferred to another place. Lee Ji opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. He could only open a bottle of drink and take a big sip. "Let me have a bottle of 1982 Sprite to calm down," this is Lee Ji's only thought. Bang, the wine glass was gently put down, and Father Edward sat in the confessional quietly reading 100 Years of Solitude. He enjoyed this quiet moment. Edward was an old priest. He was over 70 years old, but he had never been promoted. His position has always been an ordinary priest in a community church in Queens, New York. However, Father Edward enjoyed this kind of life and did not care about the power within religion. He was a devout believer, but he rarely took the initiative to preach. Because Father Edward believed that belief or non-belief was a human choice. God should not interfere with human free will. Free will is precious and should be protected. It was also because of this view that Father Edward was still an ordinary priest in a community church at the age of 70. However, he was very popular in the community because the pressure of modern life was getting greater and greater. Urban people, especially city people in megacities like New York, had more or less some mental illnesses. It could be temporary depression, or excitement, or mental exhaustion. These were all very normal phenomena, and many developed countries, including the United States, took this kind of mental illness or psychological depression very seriously. Therefore, psychologists' clinics in the United States were as normal medical services as dentists' clinics. There was no psychological pressure when people went to see a psychologist or a dentist. Of course, just as most Americans did not have the money to see a dentist, many Americans did not have the money to see a psychologist. After all, the hourly fee charged by a psychologist was really not low. In this case, Father Edward's confessional became a good choice. Father Edward never asked the people who came to confess whether they were religious or not, nor did he ask about their identities. Even the design of the confessional made it impossible for him to see what they looked like. He always just listened in the confessional and occasionally talked to them. He wanted to give psychological treatment to those who came to confess or pray. Because Father Edward felt that when a person was mentally healthy, he would not commit a crime. As long as he did not commit a crime, it would be the greatest forgiveness for the world. This was also his greatest achievement as a priest, which was more important than preaching 100 people to believe in religion. Leading a person who might go astray to the right path could save the lives of 100 innocent people. Some people like Father Edward resolved many possible shootings or other crimes through his enlightenment. Perhaps his achievements would never be praised or understood in his lifetime. But there are always people like him in this world, who use humble power in the bodies of ordinary people, but practice the most noble cause in the world. This group of people are washing the symbol of the human race. They are working hard to cleanse the symbol of humanity. Even in the era of material desire, they still want to preserve the glory of human nature. There are many people who break the dirty water of human nature, but there are also many people who clean up the stains of human nature and let it continue to shine. There are doctors, soldiers, teachers, and all kinds of ordinary people. Of course, there are people like Father Edward. They are doing the same thing in different forms, and perhaps they themselves are unaware of it. Instead of putting a noble cause at a very high level, they treat it as a meaningful ordinary job. Perhaps this is the main reason why these people can persist for decades. Father Edward likes to drink a glass of wine in the confessional. He drinks his own wine. However, because his craftsmanship is not particularly good, the wine he brews is far worse than the wine that costs tens or hundreds of dollars a bottle in the store. The homemade wine tastes slightly sour at the beginning and only has a little sweet taste when it is savored. Father Edward likes this taste very much. He calls it the taste of life. The confessional was filled with a faint aroma of wine. Father Edward had read the 102nd page of 100 Years of Solitude in his hand. Just as he finished reading this page and was about to turn the page, Father Edward heard someone coming into the confessional compartment. Slightly heavy footsteps. Father Edward could tell from the footsteps that its owner was full of worries. "Father, do you think the peace in this world is real or false?" The English voice with a slight Middle Eastern accent was very calm and powerful. "Do you think our world is moving too fast? P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival." Chapter 754. I'm back again. "Father, do you think our world is moving too fast?" asked the man with a Middle Eastern accent. His question stunned Father Edward. Father Edward closed the page of 100 Years of Solitude. After thinking for a while, he replied, "What do you mean?" "Everything." The man's voice replied, "I mean everything. Everything, everything. Our world is entering a fast lane, don't you notice it, Father?" Father Edward didn't know what the man opposite wanted to ask, or what the man was thinking. But Father Edward still answered his question, "Are you talking about the changes in our world?" "Yes, it is indeed very fast. From medical care to energy, to travel methods. All of this is changing, and these changes have changed the lives of many people. Do you think this is a good thing, Father?" the man opposite asked in a low voice. Father Edward gently stroked the spine of the book. Mr. Birmingham, who lives in this community, once experienced a terrible car accident. He had to have both legs amputated at the knees. The loss of his legs also made him unemployed. Although the company paid a penalty for breach of contract and the driver of the car accident also paid a large sum of money, Birmingham's lost legs could never be found again. His girlfriend also left him. To be honest, that was his lowest point. At that time, he often came to me and mentioned countless times that he wanted to commit suicide. I could only keep persuading him and comforting him, telling him that there would always be hope for him to live. I am a priest and I believe in my God, but unfortunately I have never really heard God's call. So I don't have the power of God to cure Mr. Birmingham's illness. Father Edward spoke in a low voice, and there was a special appeal in his tone. All I can do is like a placebo prescribed by a doctor. It may not be effective for the patient's condition, but it can only comfort Birmingham in his heart. The other end of the confessional was very quiet. Apart from the breathing that indicated that the other party was still there, you could not hear any sound from the man on the other side. He listened quietly to what Father Edward said. Day after day, year after year, Birmingham was a good man. He used to be helpful and a good man in the community. He had very good carpentry and electrical skills. People would always need his help, and he always smiled optimistically at that time. But everything changed after he lost his legs. He could not accept the pity and sympathy of others. It was more painful than killing him. I really could not accept that such a good man would end his life in any way. I prayed countless times, hoping that God could hear my voice and send an angel to save Birmingham. Father Edward picked up the wine glass from the table and took a sip of the red wine he brewed. I don't know if God can hear my voice, but I have been doing this. Until the Osborne Group announced the new limb regeneration medical plan last year. I know this may be the best chance to save Birmingham. The Osborne Group selected the first batch of patients across the United States and implemented some public welfare medical care. Other colleagues in the community and I launched an initiative. We reported Birmingham's situation to the Osborne Group, and he was selected in less than a month. The man opposite interrupted. He was cured, right, Father? Father Edward nodded. Yes, that's right. He was cured, although he said the treatment process was painful. But when I saw his new legs, I could hardly believe my eyes. If there is a miracle in this world, I think I have seen it with my own eyes. This is a miracle. Father Edward was a little excited. Birmingham stood up again and found a new job. He started to smile again. He even joined the vigilante organization of the Justice League. He works hard to help those who are unfortunately disabled due to car accidents or accidents. He uses his own experience to encourage everyone not to give up hope. Because now someone has brought miracles to the world. Father Edward paused here. So sir, you just asked me if the world is moving too fast? I think yes, but I think this is a good thing. The world is moving in a good direction. Although I am old, I can still feel that society is beginning to boil again. The atmosphere is just like when we first landed on the moon decades ago. Father Edward said seriously, this is the best of times. I am fortunate to be born in this era and witness unprecedented feats in human history. The man opposite the confessional took a deep breath, but this is also the worst of times. We may have to endure unprecedented pain brought about by the great changes in human progress. It may hurt for 2 generations or even more. And I don't know whether this change in process is good or bad for mankind. Your tone is a bit pessimistic, sir. Father Edward said somewhat non-committally. The man opposite the confessional said in a low voice, maybe, it may be because I have seen too much. Do you know, Father, the war in the Middle East has stopped. The Middle East, which has been in chaos for decades, has suddenly become peaceful after oil lost its value. Father Edward nodded. This is a good thing. There will no longer be so many refugees homeless, and there will no longer be so many innocent people dying at the gunpoint of warlords. They can return to their hometowns, or farm, or build. This is a new era, and they can build their homes peacefully. The man opposite the confessional did not quite agree with this view. This is only temporary. The competition brought about by new energy sources actually just brings the disputes on Earth into space. The peace in the Middle East is only because the Middle East is not qualified to play this game now. The real players in this game are the superpowers. Even aliens we don't know about. When we step out of the Earth, are we really ready? Is it the great development of the universe, or the demise of human civilization? Countless disputes are hidden in the dark universe. We can't see the truth and can't predict the future. Are those who led the Earth into this era really superheroes? Do they really understand what the price of peace is? What the man across from the confessional said was a little profound, and Father Edward didn't know how to respond for a moment. He thought for a long time before he said, there are always many forks in the road in the course of history. Sometimes we take the right path, and sometimes we take the wrong path. But no matter whether we take the right path or the wrong path, it is better than not moving forward in the end. What makes us human, I think, is our curiosity and courageous spirit of exploration are very important. Because of a curiosity, humans have mastered the use of tools, and because of courageous exploration, we have connected the world together. In this process, we have taken many detours, and some people have failed while exploring these methods. They are not necessarily always right, and they have even paid a heavy price. But mankind has not stagnated because of these pains. We just keep accumulating experience, eliminating wrong methods, and then finding the right way. Father Edward had put down the book, and he said very seriously, are those who lead us forward superheroes? I think so, because they are using their lives and all their honors to explore the way for us. If they stand still, they can still be heroes, but if they continue to explore, they may be doomed. Some things always have to be done by someone. Father Edward finished these words in one breath, and he felt a little thirsty. He wanted to pour a glass of red wine, but he found that the other side was surprisingly quiet. He asked softly, Sir? Sir? The other side was already silent. In a Maybach car, Dr. Ethan looked out the window at the high-rise buildings in New York and whispered, I'm back again. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Please vote for Mid-Autumn Festival. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 755, Whatever You Think Is Wrong. Dr. Ethan naturally had things to do when he returned to New York. The Zodiac Group he founded has now officially started operations. Relying on various means, Dr. Ethan has eroded the various legal legacies left by the Mandarin. Those formal industries that cannot be traced back have been taken over by Ethan. Those sunset industries, such as various energy industries, have been sold by Ethan. These things will be a burden in the future, so they should be sold early. Take advantage of the fact that they can still be sold at a little price now. He still kept the chemical industry, because even if humans enter space, the chemical industry is still a very important link. In this way, the entire Ten Rings Gang's industry has been sold by him. He would rather use cash to form a new Zodiac Group than accept those industrial chains that he thinks have no future. The Zodiac currently has considerable cash flow, and Dr. Ethan has mastered a lot of technology, including some biotechnology and mechanical electronics technology. However, there are not many technologies that can be converted into products. Ethan can only make appropriate modifications to some traditional electronic circuit systems. There are also some other legacies left by the Ten Rings Gang that need to be industrialized. The entire Zodiac Group can make a profit and is considered a healthy company. If Ethan is given enough time to develop, he may be able to lead a giant enterprise. But that may take 30 or 40 years, which is too long. Ethan doesn't have that much time to wait. Because he has a sense of urgency, and this sense of urgency comes from nowhere. But Ethan looks at the world, which is advancing as fast as a raging fire, but the undercurrents are hidden. When economic construction is in an era of rapid expansion, the undercurrents below will be temporarily suppressed. But once development stagnates, the contradictions accumulated in the past will erupt in an instant. This is Ethan's idea, and this idea has been proven by countless examples of various events that have occurred in history. This is indeed what will happen. From south to north, from east to west. There are such things everywhere, whether it is the impact of the unemployment wave in the United States, or the subsequent economic recession in Japan, and even the current generation of abandoned otaku. In fact, the contradictions have never been resolved, but they have been transferred. Ethan feels that he needs to do something. Before the conflict that may break out, he needs to make some reserves. The progress of the Zodiac is too slow, especially the virus excavation is a money-burning hole. Ethan has already thrown a lot of money into it. But it is still not enough. Now Ethan needs to seek some help. The Maybach car slowly drove into the center of Manhattan, and the Stark Industries Group building was clearly visible. Dr. Ethan murmured to himself, "Tony, I hope you are not so stubborn now. Because you have profoundly changed the world, then you have the obligation to make it normal. Otherwise." In Lee G's small villa. Is Tony Stark going to hold his wedding earlier? Peter Parker asked in disbelief. Hey, he didn't mention this when I had lunch and chatted with him at the Horizon Foundation a few days ago. Lee G was packing his clothes while answering Peter's question. Yes, for various reasons. Pepper is pregnant, so he moved up the date of the wedding on New Year's Day, January 1st. Now he wants to hold the wedding before Christmas. It seems a bit tasty. In the previous chat with Tony at the Venus base, he talked about him and Pepper and their children. As they talked, he suddenly felt that he should hold the wedding faster. After the disaster relief operation in Florida was over, Tony did not transfer those engineering mechas back to the Venus base. Instead, he sent them all to the island in New Zealand to speed up the process of the entire island. So on that day, Tony suddenly said as if his brain had a cramp, "I think it's good to hold the wedding next Sunday, what do you think?" Lee G and Rogers, huh? By the way, you'd better dress appropriately for my wedding, don't make me look bad. Of course, you can't dress too well or too handsome, because I'm the protagonist that day. By the way, remember to order a new suit. Tony said all his plans in a row. Sometimes Iron Man's personality is really unpredictable about certain things. So, Tony set the date for the wedding. Anyway, the wedding must be held before Christmas. As for the day, Tony didn't care much. Anyway, he felt that the preparations were almost done. But he forgot to consider another thing, that is, he and Pepper might be almost ready. But are others ready? For example, Li Ji is like this now, he turned out all his formal clothes. Well, actually there are only 2 sets. Come on, young people of 18 to 19 years old don't prepare many suits or tuxedos. Li Ji has a lot of sports suits, denim jackets and hip-hop clothes. But those are definitely not suitable for weddings. If he wears a denim jacket to attend Tony's wedding, Tony will be very upset when he sees him. His personality is really annoying. Li Ji looked at the 2 suits on the bed and frowned. Actually, he asked me to inform you that the time for his wedding has been changed. But damn, the new suit I ordered before will not be ready until the day before Christmas. It was originally prepared for his wedding on January 1st, and Lan's evening dress was also custom made. It's too late. It looks like we can only wear old suits. Peter made a face. It just so happens that I only wore the suit I bought for Harry's engagement ceremony once. It would be a pity if I don't have the chance to wear it a second time. By the way, has Tony designated someone to be the best man to escort the ring? No, he has to discuss it with Pepper. Li Ji muttered in his heart, it would be best if I could get my ring back. Tony has chosen the flower girl and the little angel. We just happen to know each other. He wanted me to go and talk to them. Li Ji curled his lips when he said this. Peter asked curiously, who? Mindy and Laura. Tony has seen them from a distance. But he has never dealt with them. Not to mention Laura. He actually chose Mindy to be the little angel. Huh. If he knew that Mindy had blackmailed the head of the White House office for snacks for 20 years. Li Ji shook his head. Peter smiled and said, then Tony has to prepare a container of candy before Halloween to prevent Mindy from making trouble at his wedding. Just as Li Ji and Peter were talking about this topic, Thor also came to the door of Li Ji's room. He leaned against the door and said, you are lucky to still have an old suit to wear. I can't buy good ready-made clothes in my size. I guess I can only wear a plaid shirt to his wedding. Li Ji waved his hand nonchalantly, that's nothing. You even attended Asgard's triumph ceremony in a vest and flip-flops. Tony's wedding will not be more grand than that. You are not afraid of Odin, so why are you afraid of Tony? Thor was amused by what Li Ji said. He laughed twice before he remembered why he came here. Oh, by the way, if you have time, you'd better go down and take a look. If you don't want Strange to die. Huh? Li Ji looked at Thor questioningly, and at the same time a shrill scream came from the basement. Chapter 756 Please, you are stupid. Strange now lives in Li Ji's basement. In fact, Li Ji wanted to arrange for him to live with Thor at first. But for various reasons, Strange refused. He would rather live in a basement with a bad environment than live in the same room with Thor. There was no other way. Li Ji could only clean up the basement for him and bought a new bed, table and other furniture. Now Strange is considered to be settled here. When he was in Kamartaki, Strange has actually learned most of the entry-level techniques of mages, including stealth, basics of mage's footwork, mastery of mage's footwork, ladder cloud vertical and flipping cat technique. This is the footwork type. There are also some basic fighting skills, basic use of cold weapons, reasonable use of your fists, techniques of big and small demons subduing fists, basic sword skills and 23 mistakes that novices often make, aesthetics of violence, axe and knife, not just a casting tool, close combat skills of wands and matching of stick techniques. There is also Strange's optional horizontal training Kung Fu Indestructible Golden Body. Strange has not mastered it yet, but has just started to look through it. By the way, all the books mentioned above were personally compiled by Wang, the chief steward and chief instructor of fighting skills of Kamartaki. From the vast amount of information in Kamartaki, some of the most suitable skills for beginners were sorted out. And these are the basics for getting started as a mage. Strange has learned all of them, but most of them are still in the beginner stage. It will take a lot of time to really master all these skills. Oh, by the way, Strange also learned a course called Basic Meditation, Empty Your Mind, which is said to be helpful for improving magic power. However, Strange has been in Kamartaki for so long, and the only spell he has learned is a lighting spell. To be honest, Li Ji thinks that Strange should wear a pointed hat, a fake long white beard, and a robe and cloak. Then Strange can shout, "Fly, you fools." He is simply Gandalf, absolutely, no problem at all. Li Ji always felt that the Lord of the Rings was all a lie. Why can mages fight better than knights and warriors, and can also release powerful magic? Such a career setting is too unbalanced. In response to Li Ji's question, Lan once answered, Because those who can become mages are the elite among the elites. Since most people can become warriors, why can't the more difficult mage elites master those combat skills? Everyone can learn the skills of a warrior, it just depends on how high your personal talent can achieve. But if you want to become a mage, you have to be outstanding, outstanding, and outstanding again. The threshold for this thing itself is very high. It requires extraordinary perseverance and determination far beyond your peers, and the ability to endure loneliness and temptation on the road of exploration. Only in this way can you become an outstanding mage. Lamb said this very seriously. Lychee opened his mouth and said somewhat forcefully, but the Ancient One looks more like a wizard, which is in line with the settings in those fantasy novels and games. Lan raised his eyebrows. Really? In fact, the Ancient One has rarely taken action in recent years. He usually uses magic to solve problems that can be solved with magic. But in fact, he is probably the most powerful person in the entire Kamartak area in terms of fighting skills, although he is a little old. But I can guarantee that he can defeat Thor with his stick skills. The Ancient One's stick skills were once taught by a master, but he just doesn't use them now. Lan shrugged and said these words with a relaxed look. Lychee could only surrender to this. Well, you wizards are so bad, and I, a student who can't learn magic, can only learn to cook. Wizards are amazing. Even without a cook to cook, you will starve to death. Humph. After Strange came to Lychee's house, Lan was responsible for teaching Strange magic knowledge. Because Wang had already given those basic physical skills to Strange, Lan was now in charge of teaching Strange the basics of magic for mages. The Devil's Lies, the flow of magic, a reasonable combination of 1000 common magic and 500 home magic. Note, this book was written by Lan himself, Magic Alchemy and Advanced Chemistry, author, Newton. Then there was the Basic Spells Collection, which had a special note on the title page. Please do not pronounce it incorrectly, otherwise you will bear the consequences. These books are quite thick, and each one is as thick and heavy as marble wall bricks. If they are stacked together, they would probably weigh 100 or 200 pounds. Lan used the levitation technique to make these books fly automatically behind her. In Strange's basement, Lan made these books fly in front of Strange. These are the books you want to read recently, and I selected them. I think they will help you learn. Bang! The books fell to the ground with a dull sound, and just by this sound, Strange could guess how heavy these books were. These books stacked together were probably nearly 1 meter high, and they were all large format. Strange couldn't help but whistled. Well, it looks like I've been busy for the past year. Lamb frowned. 1 year? I think you may have misunderstood something. Huh? Strange looked at Lan with a suspicious look. Lan pointed at the pile of books and said, these books were used by me to get started when I was 14 years old. It took me about a month to read them all. I marked the key points in them. Some places can be skipped, but some places must be memorized completely. Just like when you study medicine, studying medicine is not about memorizing various nouns and remembering the position of the trachea, and the same is true for magic. You can use a month to memorize the key points I marked. Lam said seriously. As a first-time teacher, Lan was still very serious. Before teaching Strange, she secretly prepared lessons and even prepared small notes for herself. In case she missed anything, she felt that since the Ancient One handed Strange over to her, she had to train him strictly, so as not to disappoint the Ancient One's expectations of her. After hearing what Lan said, Strange opened his mouth wide. He pointed at the pile of books in disbelief and said, "What did you say? You have to finish reading all these in 1 month. That's impossible." As Lan was a teacher for the first time, the first teaching method she proposed was rejected by the students, which made her a little angry. But she was not very confident in her level as a teacher, so Lan asked, Strange, do you really think it won't work? Strange shook his head. No. Lan took a deep breath. Well, since he's an idiot, then I can only use the idiot teaching method. Strange, did she just despise my IQ? Chapter 757 The Price of Becoming Stronger. Strange has always felt that he is very smart, in many ways. Because as a world-class neurosurgeon, the amount of knowledge he needs to master is almost as vast as the sea of smoke and smoke for ordinary people. Probably many ordinary people have read books and learned knowledge in their lifetime, which is not as good as the results of his self-study during the 2-year internship. His memory is excellent, which allows him to have a photographic memory of some knowledge in the book. But memory is one thing, and understanding and digestion is another. Because the application of knowledge is not an exam, The words of predecessors in the book need to be digested and absorbed by oneself, and then converted into your own words, so that you can better understand and express. A full score in the exam does not mean that you have really learned this knowledge, it only means that you remember it. But when it comes to actual application, it is not uncommon for people who have learned this knowledge to be blind. And magic is a very profound thing. In addition to the subjects of biology and chemistry that Strange himself has a certain foundation in, others include the flow of magic and the foundation of magic, which are classified by Strange as the category of mysticism. And this category is something he has never touched before, and he needs to understand it thoroughly, which means that he needs more time. Finish reading all the books given by Lan in 1 month? If he really did that, Strange promised that he could only say that he had read through all the books. Maybe he could force himself to remember a lot of things, but it was meaningless. Remembering does not mean understanding. Lan grew up in Kamartaki. Many things were learned by osmosis. This gave her a natural advantage in learning the basics, because she already knew what she wanted to do and what goals she needed to achieve in the end. Coupled with Lan's natural reading habit, this made her study twice as fast with half the effort, and her progress far exceeded all the wizards of the same period. In Kamartaki, Lan was called a genius magic girl. But Strange certainly couldn't do it. He felt that he really couldn't learn at Lan's speed. So Lan could only come up with a stupid teaching method. Open page 21 of the basic spells. I will teach you the most basic levitation first. Lan waved her hand, and the basic spells, which was almost 3 times the thickness of the Oxford Dictionary, was placed on the table by her. You have already learned basic meditation, so I don't think I need to teach you this. Now I will teach you the most basic use of spells. You should follow me in doing what I do. Then remember the steps, learn first and think later. Lan proposed her own, idiot teaching method. After mastering the results, you can then appeal to the principal. This is the most effective learning method. But you need to think about why while learning. I think this learning method should not be difficult for you, right? Although Lan used a question, her eyes projected a kind of affirmation. This look seemed to say, if you dare to say it's difficult, then I can only give up on you as a student and finally teach you a stupid teaching method. To be honest, Lan did prepare a set of what she thought was a stupid teaching method. That is, first teach the theoretical basis, then conduct a practical operation preview, and finally the magic operation. This step-by-step learning method is the slowest in Lan's opinion. Even an old ox can learn this teaching method, okay? Lan once said so confidently. In the kitchen, a cook who was making tomato beef brisket silently cut the beef into pieces. As a result, he didn't eat tomato beef brisket that day, but ate beef meatballs instead. So under Lan's request, Strange began his magic learning career. And the first magic he needed to master was levitation. These books are too heavy. If you hold them in your hands like a fool, your arms will ache after a long time. Levitation can free your hands. You can flip through these books automatically while trying to practice the spells on them. I think this is the first magic you need to learn. Lan explained. So Strange began his own journey of magic learning and self-study. Lan did teach him a lot of things very carefully, but you can't expect to understand what she said at once. Her thinking changes too quickly. Lan is only willing to say many principles once, and occasionally twice. If you ask her to repeat it for the 3rd time, haha, she will look at Strange with a look of "Are you mentally retarded?" Strange was angry. I am a top student after all. When I was studying in the UK, who in the whole department was better at self-study than me, and who could learn faster than me? You look down on me by looking at me like this. A top student has the dignity of a top student, okay? From then on, Strange began to practice almost without sleep and food. He had extraordinary perseverance, which allowed him to quickly meet Lan's requirements. In this way, Lan looked at him with a more normal look, thinking that this guy was not so stupid. However, his obsession with learning made Luigi a little worried. He once whispered to Lan, "Is it really okay for Strange to be so obsessed with learning? He only sleeps about 6 hours a day, sometimes even less. And he doesn't eat much food." Lan shook his head. No, in fact, many wizards learn this way. He is the one favored by Ancient One. I have to put some pressure on him. If he doesn't have the determination to die to study, he is not qualified to inherit the position of Supreme Sorcerer. It would be better to let Doom be the Sorcerer Supreme. It turns out that everything Lan did was for a purpose, and Luigi could only agree with this. It is naturally impossible to become the supreme sorcerer while eating hot pot and singing. The more you suffer, the greater your career will be. This statement may not be correct, but it does make sense in a certain way. By the way, this is the supplement I brought from Kamartaki. It is a potion produced by the Hong Kong temple that can help Strange. Lan suddenly remembered this thing. She took out a few bottles of things in glass bottles from her bedside table and handed them to Li Ji. This potion can be perfectly dissolved in water and has no peculiar smell. In the future, you can add it to Strange's drinking water for him to drink. Sow injection milk? What the hell is this? Li Ji looked at the Chinese label on the glass bottle in shock. Lan shrugged. It's just a disguised packaging. Just like the London Temple disguised as a museum, the New York Temple is a museum and art gallery. The Hong Kong Temple handles a large number of alchemical potions, so their disguise is a medicinal material company and a chemical company. So it's not surprising that they use this kind of thing as a cover. Li Ji opened his mouth slightly and rubbed his upper teeth with his tongue. Okay, I just want to confirm this. What is the sow injection milk used for, and is it harmful? Lan answered the question. It is mainly to help mages meditate, concentrate, improve sleep quality and speed up the activity of magic flow. Overall, it is a very good supplement that can be consumed for a long time. You can think of it as coffee or tea for mages. Kamartaki has a history of drinking this beverage for at least 200 years. For example, Wang drinks this every day. Li Ji looked at the trademark and finally shook his head. Okay, for the name of sow injection milk, I will never drink this as tea. Lan stomped his feet. That's a cover-up. Li Ji looked at the bottle and then at Lan. He asked carefully, do you drink this stuff every day? Lan shook her head. No, in fact, female mages rarely drink this. Li Ji was a little surprised. It sounds good. Is it harmful to female mages? Lan nodded slightly. This potion has a little side effect. It doesn't affect male mages much, but it's very troublesome for female mages. Li Ji was a little curious. What is it? Lan waved her hand. Just slight hair loss. After all, accelerating to become stronger requires a price. Li Ji. Strange felt that he was in a very good mood recently, unusually good. The learning speed and efficiency improved very quickly. He felt that he had opened his mind and found the trick to learning magic. Or to use the Eastern method, he had an epiphany. That's why he's learning so fast now. He can learn all kinds of small spells in just a few hours. For example, bending a paper clip, turning a coin into a button, etc. Recently, the wizard named Lan didn't give him a bad look. Look, this is the dignity of a top student. Strange thought with some pride, and he poured himself a cup of tea from the water bottle on the table. The bottle contained cold brewed black tea, which was specially provided to him by Li Ji. It could help him refresh himself and nourish his stomach. Strange liked to drink this kind of black tea very much, which was more fragrant than the Ceylon black tea he had drunk before. He thought that maybe he should ask Li Ji where he bought these black teas from, so that he could continue to brew them when he got home. Drinking black tea and reading magic books was a leisurely time for Strange. His scalp was a little itchy, and Strange couldn't help scratching his temples. Something seems wrong. Strange scratched it again, and he rubbed his temples on both sides vigorously. This special itching made him feel uncomfortable. When Strange felt that the itching had eased, he let go of his hands. Only then did he realize that he had actually grabbed a full hand of hair. He looked in the mirror and saw his temples. Strange screamed in horror. Li Ji, who was talking to Peter upstairs about what to say at Tony's wedding, heard the voice. At Thor's reminder, Li Ji ran downstairs and went to the basement. He saw Strange lying on the ground, shaking helplessly, and his hair being grabbed by him. He also noticed Lan's figure flashing by from the corner of his eye. Li Ji looked at Strange and mourned in his heart. This is the price of becoming stronger. Chapter 758. We don't want to either. Regarding Strange's hair loss, Li Ji lit a candle in his heart and mourned for a few seconds. It was not until Strange was carried out of the basement by Li Ji and poured him a glass of water to let him calm down. Strange was still shaking in disbelief. His tone was very panicked. Oh my god, I'm starting to lose my hair. And it's a large area of hair loss. Damn. Do you have a radiation source at home? He stared at Li Ji fiercely, and Li Ji naturally shook his head. How is it possible? If there is a radiation source, how can I still live here? Aren't you afraid of mutation if you live here? Li Ji felt a little weird after saying this. The people living in this house seem to be almost mutated. There is no problem with my diet, rest, and I didn't recite the spell wrong. Why do I have such a large area of hair loss? This is unscientific. Strange scratched his temples where he was starting to lose hair. He brought out some hair again, which made him a little hysterical. I don't want to be bald. I can't be bald. It's so ugly to be a big bald head like Wang. I don't want to be like him. Li Ji forced the somewhat crazy Strange back to his seat. Li Ji noticed that Lan was standing on the steps. She seemed a little surprised that Strange had such a strong reaction. In Kamartaki, it is common sense for male mages to have less hair. What's so surprising? Li Ji gave Lan a look. Look, it's all your fault. You're driving me crazy. Lan also gave him an innocent look back. I didn't expect it either. Strange didn't notice the eye contact between the two. He just continued to roar hysterically. There must be a problem there, it must be. I want to find the reason and eliminate it. I can't lose my hair. This is a man who regards his personal image as more important than his life. It can be seen from his inner fear of doom, but he never changes his expression. The noise made by Strange was too loud, and Sif, who had been practicing sword in the backyard, was also attracted. She leaned against the wall of the corridor and asked Lan, who was standing on the stairs, have the male wizards of Kamartaki become so fragile now? It's like they want to kill them if they lose even a little hair. Lan sat on the stairs, holding up his face with both hands and said distressedly, no, everyone else is fine, only he has become like this. I just want him to have some confidence. Fortunately, Lan spoke in a low voice, and Strange's sanity was also very low now, so he didn't notice what Lan said at all. Li Ji felt that he needed to make Strange return to normal. He pressed Strange and said loudly, listen, listen. I told you to listen to me. The huge roar made Strange come back to his senses temporarily. Li Ji stared into his eyes and said, you just lost your hair because of too much mental pressure recently. This is a very normal phenomenon. Middle-aged men in big cities don't have much mental pressure now. You are not the first and you won't be the last. Strange's lips trembled, but I don't want to be like this. Li Ji suspected that he heard Strange's sobs. He could only helplessly say, okay, okay. My great doctor, great wizard. Losing hair is not losing the whole world, okay. Strange disagreed with Li Ji, but saving hair loss is as important as saving the world, okay. Oh, why is this so familiar, as if I had said it before? Li Ji recalled it a little. He shook his mind, okay, you have a point. But now that technology is advanced, even broken limbs can be regenerated, what's the big deal about hair loss? Strange frowned, what do you mean? Li Ji patted him on the shoulder, Dawn 101 hair growth water. It is sold in major outlets around the world, and the cure rate for hair loss is as high as 99.999%. You can't be the unlucky one in 10,000. Strange immediately recovered his spirit, you are right, you are right. I don't have time to be sad here now, I need to take action. After saying this, he ran into his basement like the wind. Then, accompanied by a clanging sound, after a while Strange appeared in front of Li Ji with a huge package on his back. Li Ji looked at him in surprise. What do you want to do? Wait in line. Strange said as a matter of course, don't you know how hard it is to buy Dawn 101? Dawn 101 hair growth water and Dawn skin repair magic water are in short supply in the global pharmaceutical and cosmetic market. The price on the black market is almost 5 times higher than the price on the regular market, and it is still in short supply. The profit is comparable to drug trafficking. I heard such a story when I went to South America. Now the hard currencies that South American gangs can accept include US dollars, euros, gold, drugs, and then Dawn 101 and Dawn magic water. They are using Dawn 101 as settlement funds for underground transactions. Note, I heard that the coupons for the Dawn 101 and Dawn magic water set worth 500 US dollars can be exchanged for an Uzi submachine gun on the black market. Or it can be exchanged for drugs of the same price. I heard from other members of Doctors Without Borders that you can't afford to offend anyone who uses Dawn products to settle underground transactions in South America. Strange told these stories seriously. Li Ji felt that his jaw was about to drop to the ground. If what Strange said was true, then wouldn't the Illuminati and others' Dawn technology products contribute to the prosperity of the gangs in a certain way? We just want to save hair loss and skin beauty while saving the world. Li Ji shouted in his heart. When he saw Strange carrying a lot of bags and preparing to go to the business outlets to queue up all night, Leiji grabbed him and said, "Wait, you'd better not queue up. I don't know how long you will queue up like this." Sugan Technology shipments have always been insufficient, although it has been increasing production. Especially in New York and Los Angeles, the demand is so great that you may not be able to buy it even if you queue up all night. Strange looked at Leiji and said, "But what if I don't queue up? It's hard to buy this on the black market now." Leiji patted his chest and said, "Leave it to me. Tony and I have a good relationship. I will let Baldbuster provide you with professional services. I guarantee that you will have beautiful hair." Strange, "Really?" Leiji patted his chest loudly, "Really? I mean what I say." Strange was so excited that tears welled up in his eyes. "Thank you so much." Faced with Strange's true feelings, Leiji felt a little embarrassed. He could only run away like a fly. He should go to Tony and ask him for some hair growth water first. However, Leiji did not expect that when he went to help Strange get the hair growth water, he actually met Dr. Ethan, whom he had not seen for a long time, and he looked very different. P.S. To explain the marked places, the inspiration for Sugwon Technology products to become underground currency, or this joke, comes from Lego. In urban legends, Lego is the underground currency of gangs, and $50 of Lego coupons can be exchanged for $10 of drugs. A set of Technology Group Lego building blocks can be exchanged for an AK-47. Of course, I don't recommend readers to try to use Lego to exchange these. Chapter 759 Old Acquaintance. Peibo has been very busy recently, very busy, so busy that she can't even keep up with the pace. Because in addition to being responsible for managing the normal operation of the entire Stark Group, she also has her own personal affairs to deal with. This makes her so busy every day that she hardly has enough time to rest and sleep, which makes her feel a little tired physically. But mentally, Peibo seems very happy. Because the personal affairs to be dealt with are very important to her. Yes, very important personal affairs. Peibo touched the ring on her ring finger with a smile on her lips. Although busy, her steps are still brisk. She and Tony have already set a wedding date. In fact, from a legal perspective, the two are already husband and wife because they have registered their marriage. But the wedding has not yet taken place. For most people, the sense of ceremony of a wedding is very important. If a marriage lacks a wedding, it will always feel like something is missing. Tony bought a small island near New Zealand as a wedding venue, and Peibo did not object. Although after becoming Mrs. Stark, Pei felt that she needed to control Tony's lavish spending habits sometimes, mainly to control his spending hundreds of millions of dollars on luxurious parties and inviting a bunch of supermodels to have a carnival of wine and meat. Pei's footsteps were brisk, humming a little tune, and she happily did the basic work of the day in her office. Various tedious administrative work did not make her feel bored at all, but Pei felt that she had a sense of responsibility. After all, Tony was unreliable in business. For the future of the two, especially for the baby in her belly, Pei felt that she needed to work hard. She couldn't let Tony squander all the family's belongings. If she relied on Tony, the Stark Group might go bankrupt in the future, and then the whole family might have to go to the rescue. Thinking of this, Pei felt terrible. Note, if the husband is unreliable, then the only one she can rely on is herself. Pei's true nature as a strong woman was revealed. Although Stark Group is indeed under Tony's name, Tony, Pepper, and people who know the relationship between Tony and Pepper know one thing. In fact, Pepper has always been the one making money for Tony in this company. Of course, Tony has also contributed, but only in the field of scientific research. Tony doesn't care about administration and operations at all. Tony completely delegates power in this regard, which is because he met Pepper, a loyal little Pepper. If it were any other ungrateful person, Tony Stark might be sidelined or even kicked out of the company. This is very common in the business world. The founder of a company does not necessarily stay with the company to the end. Many original shareholders were kicked out one by the big capitalists who joined later after the company became big, even including the people who founded the company. So there is an unspoken understanding between Tony and Pepper. And this tacit understanding is also reflected in the family status. Tony can ask for various things willfully, and Pepper usually agrees. Although Pepper is very aggressive in business competition and company management, she is still very gentle to Tony. But if Pepper says that something is not possible and there is no room for negotiation, then there is really no room for negotiation, unless Tony intends to break up with her completely. Just like the earliest New Energy incident. Pepper opposed Tony's taking too big a step at the time. She did not oppose the operation of New Energy, but she opposed Tony's radical approach. In Pepper's business plan, the New Energy plan is a step that needs to be planned for 10 years and then taken step by step. But Tony was a little arrogant at the time and thought that everything was under his control. So he forcibly pushed the New Energy plan and the Lunar Helium-3 mining plan. The consequence of this plan was that Pepper and Tony fell out completely for a period of time. And then there was war in Eastern Europe, and the whole world felt a terrible cloud, and some people even said that the new Cold War era was coming. Fortunately, many things happened later, whether it was Doom's Compromise, the Battle of New York, or the current super high-speed railway. These things have diverted everyone's attention. In particular, the emergence of the prototype of the Earth Federation Management Agency has another kind of constraint on this world. So far, the riots caused by the New Energy have come to an end. But Paybo still felt a little pity. Because at that time, besides herself, Dr. Ethan also opposed Tony's New Energy plan. In order to warn Tony, he even left the United States and returned to his hometown in Afghanistan. Paybo touched the ring on her hand. She missed Dr. Ethan a little. He was a very good friend, gentle and elegant. The important thing is that he saved Tony's life in times of crisis. For Tony and Paybo, Dr. Ethan was probably one of the few people in the world who could be completely trusted. It's a pity that he couldn't be invited to her wedding with Tony, Paybo thought with some disappointment. Since Dr. Ethan went to Afghanistan, she and Tony lost the news about Ethan. Now there is no way to find him to attend their wedding. Just when Paybo was thinking about these things, Tony walked in excitedly. His face was filled with an indescribable joy, and Paybo rarely saw this kind of joyful smile. The last time he saw it was when Tony learned that he was going to be a father. Tony laughed loudly. Pepper, Pepper. You will never guess who is here. I couldn't believe my eyes. I saw him when I parked the car and walked into the company gate. I thought he was still angry with me and didn't even plan to come to my wedding. But you would never have thought he would show up. Pepper was a little puzzled by Tony's excitement. Wait, who are you talking about? Tony pointed to the door of the office with his hand. Our old friend. Dr. Ethan, he's back. Following Tony's voice, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the office. A thin and slender body, a gentle smile, and a decent black suit. It was Dr. Ethan, who had not been seen for a long time. Pepper could hardly believe her eyes. She walked quickly to Dr. Ethan. Is it really you, Doctor? Dr. Ethan smiled slightly. It's me, Miss Pepper. It's been a long time since I last saw you. Oh no, maybe I should call you Mrs. Stark. Pepper gave Dr. Ethan a hug. It's really nice to see you again, Doctor. If I say who should come to this wedding, you must be one of them. If it weren't for you, Tony might have died in a corner of the Middle East. Tony touched his beard. Okay, you have reminded me many times, Pepper. When Pepper let go of Dr. Ethan, Ethan glanced at the ring on Pepper's hand without leaving a trace. When he wanted to say something, another person came in led by the secretary. He came in and greeted Tony and Pepper, and then said, Tony, does Shuguang Technology Group have more hair growth water? Help. P.S. Note, in the new and different comic story, Tony did fall into a financial crisis after Pepper left him. He was in a situation where he spent more and more and earned less and less. The company's stock kept falling, and finally Tony Stark was kicked out by the board of directors. Iron Man Tony ended up bankrupt. He didn't even have the money and equipment to repair the Iron Man armor, so he had to go to the garbage dump and the scrap car factory to find parts that could barely be used. The Avengers funds were also cut off, and the Avengers building was also confiscated. Finally, Deadpool found an abandoned theater and built a base. He opened a store in Kaiman to sell Deadpool toys and peripherals. Relying on the sales of peripherals and autographed photos and the money from being a mercenary, Deadpool barely supported the minimum expenses of the Avengers. Chapter 760, News That May Help. Just when Li Ji asked Tony for Dawn 101 hair growth water, Dr. Ethan turned around and smiled at Li Ji. Li, long time no see. I miss the taste of the hummus you made for me. I wanted to copy your taste after I went back, but I never succeeded. Dr. Ethan turned around and stretched out his hand to Li Ji with a smile. Li Ji shook hands with Dr. Ethan in surprise. Doctor, God? You are back. Really, I am so happy. We looked for you for a long time after you left, but you seem to have disappeared. Dr. Ethan smiled and said, maybe it's because Afghanistan is too remote, and the place where I live is indeed difficult to find. It's normal that you may not be able to find me. I have been teaching in Afghanistan. Dr. Ethan's words made Lee Ji slightly stunned, but he did not show it. Lee Ji just followed Dr. Ethan's words and said, it seems to be true. Doctor, you are back just in time. I guess you have heard about Tony's wedding, and your arrival is just in time. As soon as Lee Ji finished speaking, Tony said, yes, that's right. In fact, I just wanted to say that I hope you, Ethan, will be the host and witness of my wedding. Ethan was stunned, but I don't believe in any doctrine. I can't replace the priest. Tony shrugged, who cares? Anyway, since I have seen a certain fat salted fish many times, I no longer believe in gods. It is better to believe in people than to believe in gods. Peibo patted Tony's back gently from behind, asking him to be careful about his words. But Tony just smiled indifferently, and Lee Ji agreed with Tony's words. The longer you stay with a certain Thor, the more you will refresh the lower limit of the species, God. For example, why would God be addicted to fried chicken and Coke? Why would God fall into a love triangle and not find a way out? Why would God snore in the middle of the night, and sometimes accompanied by thunder? Of course, there are also things like God being helpless when surrounded by a group of children. You have seen so many gods like this, and it is difficult for you to respect other gods. Because in your heart, you probably think, God, I have seen God before. It's just that kind of character. Lee Ji shook his head to get rid of a fat ball from his mind. He said to Dr. Ethan, since you are here, then stay. And it is a good thing to attend Tony's wedding, and you are also suitable to be the witness. Dr. Ethan saved Tony's life and played a big role in Tony's subsequent personality change. So Lee Ji also thought that Ethan was suitable to be the witness. Yes, I originally wanted Captain Rogers to take this position. But now it seems that it is not necessary. You can be my witness, and Rogers will just be my best man to escort the ring for me. I think this is good, let's just settle it. Tony patted Ethan's shoulder and said. Ethan shook his head and said with a smile, Tony, you haven't changed. You always like to ask others to make decisions. Tony laughed a few times, because my decisions are generally proven to be correct, so naturally it is best for me to make this decision. Ethan's mouth pulled out an arc, which should be a smile. Tony continued, Ethan, I will keep your room for you. And I have never let anyone touch your laboratory. Now that you are back now, I think you should not leave. We can work together to do more things. Just like before. You are my best helper. Continue to create new energy and speed up the advancement of the world. Ethan asked. Tony nodded, yes, isn't that what we need to do? This is our mission, to lead the world and human civilization to stride forward. Ethan said in a joking tone, including Iron Man deciding the fate of the entire human race. Tony, who thought Ethan was joking, shrugged and spread his hands, if necessary, why not? Iron Man leads the world to progress, it sounds cool. Pepper smiled softly beside Tony, and although Lee Ji was also smiling for Dr. Ethan's return, he was secretly paying attention to Dr. Ethan. Although he couldn't tell why, Lee Ji felt that Dr. Ethan was a little different, and a weird feeling made him feel very abrupt. It seemed that Dr. Ethan had something more, but you wanted him to specifically say what was different about Dr. Ethan? Lee Ji couldn't answer again. Maybe I'm too suspicious. Lee Ji said in his heart, but he always felt that there was a knot in his heart. Dr. Ethan stayed in the Stark Group building. He also wanted to reminisce with Tony. At the same time, he also talked about the fact that he got a small sponsorship to set up a small company. He also had to discuss the Zodiac's investment plan with Pepper and Tony. So Lee Ji came back from Stark Company with a large box of hair toner. When he opened the door with a large box of Dawn 101, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Lee Ji, which scared Lee Ji. Strange looked at the large box of Dawn 101 that Lee Ji was holding with great joy and said, my God, did you rob the warehouse of Walmart in New York? Lee Ji shook his head and stuffed the box into Strange's hand. Take it and use it well. I believe this much should be enough to save your hair. Strange couldn't wait to start the treatment. But Lee Ji was still worried about Dr. Ethan. He couldn't calm down. Finally, he sent a message to Frank. Frank, can you help me towards the meeting with Nick? I really have to meet him. and I think there are some things that need his help to investigate. After sending this message, Leiji sat on the sofa and murmured to himself, I hope I am just suspicious. Tony Stark is very happy recently, because getting married is always a happy thing. But on the other hand, the boss of Hydra, Red Skull Schmidt, is very unhappy. Why is he unhappy? Because Hydra's industry is suffering from various blows. This makes him very unhappy, and he needs to find a way to deal with it. Otherwise, Hydra will be forced to disband sooner or later because it cannot pay wages. It is said that it is a supervillain, but any villain organization or decent organization is nothing without money. Schmidt needs to think of a way to temporarily get rid of the current crisis. At this time, former U.S. military General Stryker asked for a meeting. It is said that he has a message that may be able to help. Chapter 761 The Origin of the Hulk. All the following contents and opinions are only for the purpose of shaping Schmidt's personality. Please do not take them for granted. Schmidt needs to find a good way to solve the current predicament of Hydra. In fact, since he woke up, he found that the whole world has changed too fast. In just 70 years, the world has changed so much that people can't see clearly, and at the same time they are confused. This makes Schmidt more cautious, or hesitant, when dealing with problems and implementing plans. Schmidt is very smart, but a smart person cannot simply get rid of decades of disconnection from society. Especially today's society is progressing rapidly. The development of mankind in the past 80 years has surpassed the sum of the previous 4,000 years. Information explosion, material explosion. In the era when Schmidt lived, being able to eat enough every day was a luxury for 90% of the world's people. Schmidt still remembers the food he ate every day in his childhood. Rye bread and coarse oats were the main foods. Note, coarse oats and coarse rye in those days were completely different from the refined oats and refined rye we eat today. You need to chew these foods very carefully. If you swallow them whole, they may scratch your fragile esophagus or even cause your intestines to be injured and unable to digest. Meat was not available to every family every day in those days. Schmidt's family, who had an orchard at home, was considered to be of medium status at that time. It was only once or twice a week that they could eat meat as a meal improvement. On the day of improving meals, his mother would only make whole wheat bread. If it was a festival, the family would make white bread made of refined wheat flour. Schmidt still remembers that this white bread made by his mother would be mixed with a little egg and 1/3 of milk. The aroma of eggs and milk mixed with refined wheat flour baked is the most beautiful food Schmidt remembers from his childhood. It would be even better if it was paired with homemade jam. But this is difficult, because the finished jam is usually sold for money, and the jam flavored with a lot of sugar is a luxury for the Schmidt family. Even if they produce this, they generally don't eat it because it's too expensive. But look at the world today. Schmidt can't understand what people are pursuing now. The bitter and sour rye bread that was hard to swallow, and the oats that would make your throat sore if you eat too much. Today, it has become a so-called health food, praised and pursued by a group of people who live a so-called healthy life. Schmidt thinks that these people should be locked up and let them taste what the real rye bread and oats tasted like in the 1920s. He guessed that if these people were allowed to eat it for 3 days, they would cry and shout for white bread. In fact, how much difference is there between the refined coarse grains and the refined grains in essence? Schmidt sneered at this. And the hedonism and waste prevalent in this era. Throughout the nearly 6,000 years of recorded human history, more than 50% of people have been able to fill their stomachs every day, and even pursue variety and taste in food. This period of history is only a short period of nearly 50 years or even shorter. If we look at each country, it may be even shorter, and in some countries, most people are still hungry. The food wasted in Europe every year can feed 2 Africas, and the food wasted in China, Japan and South Korea every year can meet the needs of all the poor people in Southeast Asia, including their own countries. Schmidt couldn't understand what people of this era were thinking. They sat in front of the TV and computer screens, watching various news and stories, and then tapped on the keyboard or mobile phone to send some compassionate words. Cheer for those people in poor areas and provide spiritual support. Then they threw away the food in the refrigerator that was not spoiled but just didn't suit their taste. Or those clothes that were only worn 2 or 3 times were just thrown away because they were not popular this year. Schmidt really couldn't understand this world. This world seemed to be worse than his previous world. Those in power turned a deaf ear to it. What a terrible and corrupt world. Schmidt joined the Avengers and Hydra because his family's orchard went bankrupt and he had to do it to survive. During his time at Hydra, he developed ambitions and desires for power. Anyway, the world is so rotten, and those rotten people can live well in high positions. Why can't I replace them? Schmidt thought so. Anyway, the people at the bottom are numb and indifferent. They may follow certain ideologies and shout slogans, but they are just shouting slogans and have no other use. And now the world seems to have exacerbated this situation. The separation of foolish education and elite education has divided the whole world into two completely different systems. Schmidt can feel that the world is turbulent and changing. But he always feels that he can't grasp anything. He really feels that he is behind the times. In fact, not only him, but even Captain Rogers has this feeling. The world is changing too fast. When Captain Rogers just woke up and became the leader of the Avengers, he also did not do well, or even very badly. But compared to Schmidt, Rogers has a huge advantage, that is, he has a group of real friends. They can help Rogers adapt to this era, and even help him make decisions at some point, and tell him why he should do so. But Schmidt never trusts anyone else, and he only trusts himself. How difficult is it to rely on yourself to integrate into this era of accelerated change, like a burning magnesium bar? And this is Schmidt's biggest shortcoming, he is a person who really has no friends. Leader. Stryker's low voice pulled Schmidt back from the memories of his adulthood. Schmidt shook his head gently. It's okay, you continue. Stryker was a little reserved in front of Schmidt. I just talked about creating conflicts. In fact, the main problem we are facing now is the economic encirclement and suppression from several large groups including the Stark Group. Economic problems are generally best solved by economic means. But when economic means cannot solve this kind of conflict, we need to use other means to divert the conflict. As the saying goes, war is the continuation of politics. Schmidt nodded. That makes sense, but do you think that exposing all the power of Hydra to carry out a massacre or assassination will change our situation? For better or worse? Stryker hurriedly shook his head. Of course not, leader. It is the most stupid thing to do to fight a war personally. I have served the US military for many years and I know this deeply. Proxy wars are always better than US troops personally dispatching troops. We may be able to make many things simpler without taking action, and even let Tony and his friends in SHIELD kill each other. Stryker said with a smile. Schmidt was a little curious. Tell me what you think. Stryker stretched out a finger and said, actually, this is a piece of news, a legend known to only a few people in the military. There should be no more than 3 people who know this news, and I happen to be one of them. If we spread the news we know, we may get unexpected gains. I heard that Tony Stark is going to have a wedding soon. Stryker learned about this from the news. Maybe we can give him a big gift package at his wedding. Schmidt crossed his legs and asked, what's the news? Stryker said very seriously, do you know how the Hulk appeared? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 762, Wrong Information Can Kill People. Do you know how the Hulk was born? Stryker said with a serious face. Schmidt recalled the information about the Hulk. There is information about the giant Hulk in the records of Hydra. The most notable battle was the battle with the Abomination in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil a few years ago. The two terrible monsters almost destroyed a quarter of the urban area of Rio. This incident had a great impact, and the military spent a lot of effort to settle it. The Hulk is very strong, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he is a humanoid nuclear weapon. So far, no organization has found a way to kill the Hulk in one blow. At least it can't use conventional physical methods. The Hulk has maxed out his physical resistance, and 100% physical defense is not a joke. The side evidence of Hulk's strength is the sudden appearance of the Red Giant in the previous New York battle. Although the colors are different, almost everyone who knows it knows that the Red Giant and the Hulk should be of the same origin. Just like the Abomination, but the Red Giant looks more complete. From the performance of the New York battle at that time, scientific calculations are made, and the Red Giant has almost the same ability as the Hulk. The Hulk is a fact that the US military has always wanted to cover up, but it is difficult to cover up. This terrible weapon came from the hands of the US military, But in the end it was not under the jurisdiction of the US military. Schmidt was still very interested in this. "Tell me about it." Stryker smiled, and the cunning old general smiled a little scary. "In fact, not many people know about this. But I am one of the insiders. Because of the secret research on Weapon X, I have mastered many secret channels of the military. Especially for some nuclear waste treatment and nuclear chemical raw materials that cannot be brought to the table." In 1996, the 5 permanent members including the United States signed an agreement not to conduct any nuclear weapons and radioactive weapons tests on the surface. Therefore, many military projects cannot be made public. Stryker was talking about a very clear history, and Schmidt said he understood. In fact, this agreement feels a bit like waste paper. It is unknown whether the other 5 permanent members will abide by it. Anyway, the United States does not abide by it particularly. Their secret nuclear tests or small tactical nuclear weapons experiments have never really stopped. Although most experiments can get results through computer simulation. However, some weapons still need to be tested in order to obtain the most ideal data collection. In addition to the 5 permanent members who signed the agreement, some countries do not abide by this agreement. For example, in 1998, India tested its first atomic bomb. In recent years, a country in Northeast Asia has also tested its own nuclear weapons. No matter how old its configuration is, no matter how disproportionate its power is, it is still an atomic bomb. The instability factors in these regions have been intentionally or unintentionally aggravated, and the 5 permanent members have not been able to really punish the 2 countries in the way of the agreement for various reasons, let alone ban their illegal nuclear test projects. Stryker continued, "Because of the channels I have, I know the specifications and quantities of nuclear weapons and radioactive weapons experiments conducted by the military roughly every year, and I also know the specific code names and projects of some of them. About 10 years ago, I knew that the military had a secret project. It was a new weapon developed because of dissatisfaction with the existing nuclear weapons. A brand new radioactive weapon, they called it the Green Light Project." What Stryker said seems to have nothing to do with the origin of the Hulk, but Schmidt is not in a hurry. He stared at Stryker quietly and continued speaking. Sure enough, Stryker then mentioned the focus of this conversation. That was an experiment with a gamma bomb. The military hopes to develop a clean tactical to strategic nuclear weapon. There is no radiation or contamination, and there is no need to worry about nuclear winter and dust clouds. The purpose of the gamma bomb is only to kill the basic vital signs of carbon-based life. In other words, this bomb is only lethal to living creatures. The military requires that the first phase of the 200-kilogram gamma bomb be able to instantly kill all life within a 1-kilometer radius of the explosion center. But at the same time, the bomb does not need to release extremely high temperatures and explosive airwaves. The power of the explosion should be controlled to be the same as that of an ordinary 500-kilogram equivalent aerial bomb. In short, the military wants to use a bomb to clear 10 blocks instantly without damaging the houses and buildings in the blocks. Infrastructure, and there is no residual radiation. Schmidt nodded at what Stryker said. It's a very thoughtful design. The purpose of the battle is to destroy the enemy, but not to destroy the city. We spend a day blowing up a railway during the war, and after the war we may have to spend a month repairing the railway. This is a huge waste of resources. Stryker continued in line with Schmidt's words. Yes, it was for this consideration that the military promoted the gamma bomb experiment plan. But the difficulty of developing this next-generation weapon is imaginable. The military has mobilized almost all the forces and researchers it can mobilize. Among them are 2 people we know, Bruce Banner and Tony Stark. Bruce Banner is the researcher who later became the Hulk. The reason he became the Hulk was because of a major accident when the gamma bomb reached the 3rd stage and began to test a strategic-level nuclear explosion. Stryker got to the point. Tony Stark was the U.S. national weapons contractor at the time, and his Stark Group was responsible for almost 35% of the procurement of complete sets of military facilities within the U.S. military. He was also involved in the 3rd phase of the gamma bomb experiment project. The reason was that Bruce Banner, who was a researcher on the military project at the time, ran into a bottleneck, and the military hoped that Tony Stark, as a super scientist, could help out. Stryker had an ambiguous smile on his face, but just when the 2 super scientists joined forces, the 3rd phase of the experiment failed. Bruce Banner mutated into the Hulk, and the military began to hunt him down. Stark also withdrew from the subsequent research on the gamma bomb. From then on, the gamma bomb project lost its 2 leaders and fell into a complete shutdown state. Hearing this, Schmidt came to his senses a little. So you mean that Tony Stark and Bruce Banner had problems during the 3rd phase of the experiment, which led to Bruce Banner becoming the Hulk? Stryker nodded. Yes, actually I have heard of another rumor. It was Tony who created the Hulk, because it was Tony who tampered with the bomb parameters set by Bruce Banner at the time. Schmidt's eyes suddenly became bright. He stood up and began to pace in the room. This is indeed an important news. Tony Stark is now a consulting scientist for SHIELD and SWORD, and Bruce Banner is now also listed as a member of the Avengers. I heard that Bruce Banner has always hated the fact that he turned into the Hulk. Stryker nodded. Yes, he hates this extremely. And we can do something based on this matter. Isn't Tony Stark getting married? Maybe we should tell Dr. Banner this news at this time, as long as we make Bruce Banner angry and lose control to become the Hulk. I think Tony Stark's wedding scene will be very exciting. Schmidt smiled slightly when he heard Stryker say this. Yes, it's a good idea. It will even cause more casualties. I don't know how many dignitaries will come to Tony Stark's wedding. If Hulk creates a terrible massacre, the consequences are self-evident. Schmidt also smiled in his heart and thought, a decapitation operation without spending a single soldier or bullet, so that the crisis of Hydra can be solved. Just when the Red Skull Schmidt and the old traitor Stryker happily decided on the plan to split S.H.I.E.L.D. and SWORD and to pass the blame to Professor Bruce Banner. They actually had a little flaw in intelligence. The two knew about the Red Hulk's disturbance in New York City during the Battle of New York, and they also knew that the Red Hulk was finally settled by the Avengers and the Night Watch. But they didn't know the details. Because those who participated in and witnessed the incident at that time kept their mouths shut tacitly. So Schmidt and Stryker didn't know that the man who came down from the sky and punched out all the clouds was not the tall and strong Green Hulk, but a scientist in a shirt and jeans. Chapter 763. Are you still short of people? Lee G never thought that one day he would meet the famous king of agents in the Marvel world, former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and one-eyed Nick Fury in this way. In an apartment hotel under the Greenland Group in Long Island, in a nearly 200 square meter finely decorated luxury suite. The expensive hand-woven bohemian-style carpet was laid on the ground inconspicuously, as humble as a piece of chemical fiber carpet. The composite wood floor made of maple and ash was polished by the floor wax, making people wonder whether it has friction and grip when walking on it. The handmade oak furniture is the basic furnishings of this suite. As for the crystal chandelier on the ceiling and the 75-inch 4K LCD TV, these modern appliances are not worth mentioning at all. The most eye-catching thing in this suite is not these high-end, classy, low-key, luxurious and meaningful decorations. Instead, there is a very large bar in the suite. It is a large area for a family bar, not compared with a business bar. The 4-meter-high room is furnished with a floor-to-ceiling wine cabinet. Taking up the size of an entire wall, the wine racks made of teak are densely arranged, and at first glance they look like a honeycomb. The whole room is filled with a special fragrance that is refreshing and intoxicating. Lee G guessed that half of the smell should come from the fragrance of the teak itself. The other smell, mixed with various fruity and sweet smells, should be the smell of those wines. After sobering up, note, not sobering up after being drunk, but letting the wine wake up, and drinking in this room for a long time, the fragrance diffused from those good wines has left a special smell here. A wall of wine racks are densely lined with various fine wines, various brandies, whiskeys, rums, tequilas, gins and vodkas. In the corner, there are also some dry reds, dry whites and sparkling champagnes. Lee G saw all kinds of wines that he had heard of and had not heard of here at once. This place is simply a Western wine museum. Under the only open-air window in this bar, Lee G thought it would be more appropriate to call it a wine cellar. Two men were smoking cigars that Lee G didn't understand at all. One was his old acquaintance, the Punisher Frank, and the other was a black man with an eye patch on one eye. The only remaining eye he had was very sharp. He leaned back in the leather chair, took a deep puff of the cigar, and then said, "Nightwalker, I really didn't expect that we would meet in this way. Please sit down." Lee G nodded and sat in the seat Nick pointed to. "I didn't expect that we would meet in this way either, Director Nick Fury." Frank didn't seem to be interested in the conversation between the two. He seemed to be simply enjoying the cigar and the gin in the glass. There was also an ice bucket next to him. The ice cubes that had been frozen many times showed a crystal clear luster, indicating that there were no other impurities in the ice cubes. Nick took a puff of his cigar. Actually, I didn't plan to meet you like this, especially now that I'm supposed to be locked up in jail. My existence shouldn't be known to outsiders. Nick glanced at Frank, but Frank didn't respond at all. The Punisher just silently poured half a glass of gin into his glass, then threw 2 ice cubes in it and sipped the last sip. Lee Ji smiled. Actually, it's true, Chief Nick. You can't blame Frank for this. In fact, it was a complete accident that your information was revealed. I know these things are just accidents. Maybe it's destined that we will meet in some way. Nick's mouth moved, but this is no longer within my plan. Lee Ji shook his head. The 2 old smokers puffed out clouds of smoke, making the air around them not very good, although the air vents were open for ventilation. It's impossible for you to have everything under control, Director. Just like the first big operation we carried out by the Night's Watch, hunting vampires and protecting the convoy that transported the vampire Bible. Did that plan fail? Because of various accidents. The incident that Lee Ji mentioned happened a long time ago, and it was also the first time that the Night's Watch had a side-by-side relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick raised his eyebrows. If you put it that way, it's true. Nothing can go smoothly, and you have to be prepared for everything. The two did not have a deep conversation about the previous issue but quickly changed the topic. Because Lee Ji came to ask Nick for a favor this time. So Lee Ji nodded and said, yes, double insurance is very important for many things. Just like the Thunderbolt team plan that you made, Director Fury, I still agree with it. Nick did not express any expression for Lee Ji's praise. He just put down his cigar and said, tell me, your real intention. The purpose of your calling me out. Frank said you have an important matter, which is related to the split between SHIELD and SWORD. Nick Fury's eyes were sharp. He was not here to chat with Lee Ji. In fact, he was somewhat skeptical about such a meeting, which was normal. As the king of agents, if Nick Fury could believe a person because of a few words, then his professional qualities as an agent should be considered. Lee Ji waved his hand. Well, actually this matter is complicated to say, but it is actually very simple. Lee Ji told this story about the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes in detail, especially about his killing of Howard Stark and his wife. Little Bucky involved 2 big men, Tony and Rogers, so he had to be careful. After hearing what Lee Ji said, Nick had to stand up carefully. He walked slowly in the room. If what you said is true, then the impact of this matter is very big. If the Winter Soldier appears again, or even if someone releases news about him and tells Tony or Rogers, it will cause a split between the two. Thinking of the worst result, even an old man like Nick Fury couldn't help but shudder. Rogers now has too much power, and Tony has too many resources. If they really fall out, it will be a big deal for the whole world. You're right, this is indeed a big deal, and we need to plan ahead. Nick has already started thinking of a solution. We need to find the Winter Soldier before others find him, control him. Even kill him if necessary. Nick glanced at Frank who was drinking. Frank, I need your help. You have to help me find this guy. I want to make sure he doesn't mess things up. And you, Nightcrawler, since you know the news, I hope you keep it a secret. Leave the rest to me, okay? Nick seemed to have become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. again at this time. He was giving orders step by step, and his tone was urgent. But compared to Nick who was in a state of urgency, the 2 people in front of him, Nightcrawler and Punisher, did not seem to be in a hurry at all. Nightcrawler was sitting in a leather chair playing with his nails, while Punisher was still drinking his wine calmly. Nick looked at the 2 with a look of astonishment. Are you indifferent? We are facing a big crisis now. I thought you came to me to solve the problem, Nightcrawler. Lee Ji spread his hands. I do want to solve the problem. Nick didn't like Nightcrawler's careless attitude. Then take action. You can't rely on others for everything. Aren't you good friends with Iron Man? Frank waved his hands and smiled. Nick Fury, you've been fooled. What? Nick was a little puzzled. In fact, I believe Nightcrawler has dealt with many things before he came to you. He has his reasons for not rushing, and I know him better than you. Frank smiled at Nick. There was a meaning in his smile that Nick didn't quite understand. At this time, Lee Ji also spoke. Director Nick, I am very happy that you can see the overall situation so well. Even though you lost your position as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for some reasons, you still care about the world and know what should not happen. And you are willing to deal with the follow-up of some things. This is what Nick said just now. Nick said that he would make plans and arrangements for the Winter Soldier. Leegee just repeated it. Nick heard a hint of joy in Nightcrawler's words. Nightcrawler continued, "Actually, I may not have made it clear just now, Director Nick. I have actually caught the Winter Soldier." Nick, what? Leegee continued, "And I also told Tony and Captain Rogers about this." Nick, what? Leegee, "They had a quarrel at the beginning, but I settled it in the end. It's just that there are some disagreements on how to deal with Bucky Barnes, so I thought of you, Director Nick." Nick, what? Wait. You just said that you have solved all the problems, but there are disagreements on how to deal with Bucky Barnes. Nick seemed to have guessed something. Leegee nodded, "Yes, that's right. I was a little worried at first, but Director Nick just said that we shouldn't let these bad things happen, right? Your sense of responsibility is admirable, and you still do your job even though you are not on the position. So I want to ask, are you short of people in your Thunderbolt team? Sergeant Bucky Barnes can report to your team at any time." Leegee said with a light smile. Nick Fury. Leegee felt that Director Nick's face had become much darker, but he guessed it must be his illusion, because as a black director, how could he continue to become darker? Illusion. Chapter 764. Let's drink this glass of wine and wish everything goes well. So, thank you very much for your help, Director Nick. I really didn't expect you to be so easy to talk to. You are worthy of being the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Leegee flattered Nick as if it was free. Anyway, flattering is free, so why not do it? Nick just helped him solve a big problem. If Nick doesn't agree to accept Bucky Barnes, then Leegee will really have to think more about dealing with the Winter Soldier. It's a good thing for everyone to talk without spending any money. In addition, Leegee will need to trouble Nick to do another more troublesome thing later, so if he doesn't please him now, when will he wait? Nick had a black face throughout the whole process. Although he agreed to accept Bucky Barnes, after all, he said before, "I will handle the rest of the things." After all, he can't regret what he said. Especially Nick Fury is still a very face-saving person to some extent. He still doesn't want to do things like going back on his word, at least not so obviously. Nick Fury, who had a dark face throughout the whole process, listened silently to Leegee's praise. He always felt that he was fooled. Was he fooled? He should be fooled. But Nick, who was fooled, could not retaliate or shirk. It was like he clenched his fist with all his strength and prepared to punch, but ended up hitting nothing. Nick felt that a mouthful of old blood almost spurted out of his chest. With Nick Fury's situation, do you still expect him to have a good face for Leegee's flattery? Come on. Not taking out the pulse pistol from his waist and shooting at Leegee was considered merciful. And Leegee seemed to be very clear about this. He tried to make his tone relaxed and cheerful. But Punisher Frank had no intention of cooperating with Leegee to flatter Nick. The gin in the bottle in front of him had been finished. He was now planning to find another bottle of good wine. Speaking of which, Nick Fury had a large number of fine wines collected here. And many of them were very famous. Including Remy Martin brandy that has been cellared for 65 years, and wine brewed in 1982, a year of great grape harvest and high quality. That is what people generally call Lafite in 1982. Of course, in addition to the wine of Lafite, there are many other good things. For example, several small wineries in Bordeaux with extremely rare production have brewed fine wines. Damn it. People who have been the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for more than 10 years are different. Such a generous collection of wine. Frank is actually very jealous of Nick's collection. You should know that Punisher Frank has few hobbies. There are two things he enjoys most in his life. The first is cigars and the second is fine wine. Frank is not a simple alcoholic. He is a wine taster who truly understands the three flavors of wine. It's just that his way of drinking is simple and rough, so many people think he is just a simple alcoholic. Nick's personal hobbies are similar to Frank's. When they were fighting in Vietnam, they became good friends because of their same hobbies, wine and cigars. Nick later joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and Frank joined the Marine Corps. Although Frank's rank has been promoted to lieutenant colonel and colonel, his position has always been an instructor. Instructor is a very common position, with no power and no high salary. Compared with Nick, who has been promoted to the top leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. and has the final say in S.H.I.E.L.D. during his tenure, Nick has a lot of resources at his disposal and does not need to rely on corruption to satisfy Nick's personal drinking hobby. As long as he finds some wealthy villains or terrorists who are not in the limelight, their private wine collections will be confiscated by Nick. Anyway, no one will say anything about this. The military and these special departments turn a blind eye to the rules of this kind of spoils. You should know that the 2nd Battalion of the 506th Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division found the country villa of the German Air Force Commander Göring, which contained more than 10,000 bottles of precious wines from all over the world. The battalion commander at the time, Winster, waved his hand and asked a company to pull a truck and share it among everyone. This means that all the fine wines that Göring had spent decades to accumulate were shared. Note 1. Nick's collection is not as good as Göring's, but there are also quite a lot of good stuff. For example, the bottle Frank is holding now, the green bottle looks very old, and the label on the bottle has blurred writing. The bottle is corked tightly with an oak cork, and not a trace of air can escape inside. Just looking at the appearance of this bottle of wine, you can tell that it is quite old, and there is not much wine left in it. Frank estimated that there is only about 200 milliliters but less than 300 milliliters. At most, it is about 3 glasses. This is a bottle of top-grade cognac, and Nick has boasted about it in front of Frank many times. This is a show-off between wine lovers, and Frank has wanted to drink it for a long time. But Nick has always refused. Do you know the history of this bottle of wine? You just want to drink it. Nick has rejected Frank's proposal to open the wine and drink it together more than once. He said, "This is a bottle of wine with a lot of history and stories. Do you know who owns this bottle of wine?" Frank shook his head, and Nick said with some pride, "Napoleon. That's the fierce dwarf. This is the wine he drank before a war. It was the top cognac brewed in France at that time. Do you know how much effort I put into getting this bottle of wine?" Note 2. Frank touched his cheek and said, "I don't think it's a good phenomenon for a blind man to discriminate against a dwarf. You will form a terrible discrimination chain." Anyway, he couldn't drink it, so Frank didn't mind stabbing Nick. Nick looked at Frank deeply at that time, then put the bottle back into the wine cabinet and locked it. Ping bang. Nick also made a loud noise. For Frank, every time he came to Nick's place to drink, he would inevitably be stared at by Nick. He tried to steal the wine several times but failed. Taking advantage of the fact that Luigi was talking to Nick and attracted his attention, Frank quietly stole the top cognac he had been eyeing for a long time, and prepared 3 new cups, and added 3 ice cubes in each quilt. The amber liquor poured into the crystal glass refracted light like gold. It's beautiful. Frank was intoxicated by it, and the aroma of the liquor was even more obvious. Just when Luigi confessed to Nick that he accidentally knew about the Inhumans and Magneto's global human mutant plan, Nick's face became darker and darker. Both of them smelled the aroma of the liquor. Nick was dizzy with the news brought by Luigi today, and he couldn't tell that the aroma of the liquor was his collection of cognac. But then again, even if he smelled it carefully, he couldn't tell it, because he didn't open the cork to smell the wine. Just when Luigi and Nick were chatting about the topic and the atmosphere was a bit stiff, Frank came over with a glass of wine. In fact, there's nothing that cannot be solved. Don't make the atmosphere too serious and stiff. Relax a little and have a glass of good wine. I wish our plan will go smoothly and succeed immediately. Nick took the glass of wine handed over by Frank with a stiff face. "Are you using my good wine to please me?" Frank waved his hand. "The purpose of wine is to drink, not to let you put it here for viewing. Only when the stomach and mouth enjoy it, these wines are meaningful." Luigi also took the glass of wine handed over by Frank. The wine was a little less, estimated to be only about 1 or 2. He raised a glass and said to Nick, "Then I need to trouble the director about the matter of the aliens." Nick nodded expressionlessly. "What can we do now? Some things must be solved." Nick raised the glass and took a sip of the wine in the glass. The unique fruity aroma of cognac filled the mouth, and a faint fruity aroma could be smelled by taking a deep breath. Nick was a little surprised. "Wait, this bottle of wine seems different. Where did you get it from?" Nick suddenly had a bad feeling. He asked Frank. Frank followed the standard steps of tasting cognac: first look, then smell, and then taste. After taking a sip, he said, "Oh, your collection, the bottle of Napoleon era wine that you praised so much?" Luigi gently took a sip of the cognac in the glass. Although he rarely drinks and is not good at drinking, the mellow taste is still amazing. However, Luigi noticed that Nick's hand in front of him clenched into a fist, then loosened, and then clenched again. It seemed that he was enduring something. Frank didn't care about Nick's murderous eyes staring at him. It was just a bottle of wine. If you don't drink it, will you give it away for free? He is not a collector like Nick. Good wine is best kept in the stomach. Frank sipped the wine and asked Nick, by the way, you said before that this bottle of wine was drunk by Napoleon before a decisive battle. Which one was it? The Battle of the Three Emperors. Nick said coldly, it was Waterloo. Puff. Note 1. The story of the 101st Airborne Division moving wine comes from Band of Brothers, but Band of Brothers itself comes from Colonel Winster's personal war memoirs, so the story is true and credible. Note 2. Can a bottle of wine be kept from the Napoleonic era to the present? It should be possible, because in the BBC documentary Top Luxury, I think it's the name, there is a bottle of Napoleonic cognac in a private bar in London. There are about 2 glasses of remaining. A wealthy Russian businessman paid about €35,000 to drink it. In addition, there was a food called British corned beef cans in the Allied war rations on the European front during World War I and World War II. Many of them were produced during the Napoleonic Wars. And it was kept from that time to World War I and World War II without spoiling, and it was edible. I think if canned beef without preservatives had not been invented at that time, can be stored for so long, then wine can be stored even longer. Chapter 765, Happy Birthday. Regardless of what he said, Nick finally agreed to Lee G's help in contacting Black Bolt. Because Magneto's plan to reverse the global human mutation is likely to cause irreconcilable conflicts with the Inhumans. After working with the Inhumans for so many years, Nick knows that the Inhumans are much stronger than the Earth in terms of technology and in all aspects. If they really break down or even cause a war, it will not be good for the Earth. Nick can only expose the fact that Frank secretly drank the top cognac he hid. Who said Frank is his best friend? Just drink it, what else can you do? Catch him and beat him up? Impossible. However, Lee G and Frank both think that drinking that top cognac is not a good thing. The wine that Napoleon drank before the Battle of Waterloo? No wonder there was half a bottle left. It turned out that this short conqueror had no mood or time to drink the remaining half bottle. The front line of XXX has collapsed. It would be strange if Napoleon was still in the mood to drink. This is the turning point in Napoleon's life. Lee G felt that this was not a good sign, and even a bit unlucky. In order to cheer himself up, he decided that it was time to attend Tony Stark's wedding. In fact, Tony's private island, located near New Zealand, had already started to receive guests 2 days ago. This place, which was originally an unknown deserted island, has been transformed day and night by hundreds of steel armors. Many complex facilities were pre-built in modular form at the Venus base and then transported here for assembly. The construction method is as simple and convenient as Lego blocks, which makes the reconstruction time of the entire island very short. Oh, by the way, these Lego blocks, many of these prefabricated parts were completed by Magneto in his spare time. Magneto Marx now seems to have begun to adapt to life on Venus. For safety reasons, Lee G and others are not going to let him return to Earth for the time being, but they also let Magneto pass on a message to Earth that the Brotherhood of Mutants has temporarily stopped its activities and has completely dormant. Marx's life in the Venus base is very regular, and Charles goes to him every day to chat and play chess. When he was bored, Max could also build Lego, build various prefabricated parts and starport bases to kill time. By the way, Professor Charles once secretly commissioned Lee G to find a way to bring some Lego bricks to the Venus base. The most important thing is not to be seen by anyone else, whether it is Captain or Tony or Hank and Thor. Lee G naturally followed such a request. He spent some money to buy the new Lego Star Wars series Millennium Falcon and the Lego Death Star. Oh, by the way, Lego recently reached a cooperation with the current Marvel Comics. The copyrights of the company's heroes and stories were packaged and granted to Lego. Lego can produce building blocks of Marvel heroes. Lee G bought the recently launched Lego Iron Man series, Lego Nightcrawler series, and Lego Captain America and Spider-Man series toys. At present, most of the heroes under Marvel have their own sub-series, although they are not as popular as the 4 characters of Iron Man, Nightcrawler, Captain America and Spider-Man, so they are all small boxes with about 1 to 200 parts. But this is also a good start. After all, this is an important step for Marvel and the industrialization of hero copyrights. Marvel has begun to cooperate with the world's top toy manufacturers. Oh, by the way, The Hawkeye character has not yet opened a separate subseries due to popularity issues. But friends who like Hawkeye don't have to worry, because now you can get a Hawkeye Lego figure for free when you buy any Marvel series Lego building blocks. This is Lego's conscience, please don't miss it. After Luigi handed all the Lego building blocks he bought to Professor Charles, Luigi secretly noticed that Professor Charles sneaked into Magneto Max's room at night with a large package. As for what the two did in there, Luigi didn't want to care. Well, Lego has also promoted that playing Lego can develop intelligence and prevent Alzheimer's disease, right? Luigi thinks this is also good, and playing Lego is also good. But now there are only Magneto Max, Professor X Charles, and Beast Hank on duty at the Venus base. I wonder if Hank will join Charles and the others to play Lego? Luigi guessed. As for the rest of the Illuminati, they all came to Tony's wedding. Charles and others simply didn't come because of their sensitive identities and they didn't want to disguise themselves. They chose to work at the Venus base, but Luigi said that he would use a camera to record the wedding scene and bring back a wedding cake. This unnamed deserted island in New Zealand became unusually lively in mid-December. The originally unknown island became a world-famous place because of a change of owner. And this small island with a size of 50 square kilometers is now named Future Technology Island by Tony Stark. The entire island was designed and rebuilt by Stark Industries. This includes the safety equipment and defense system of the entire island. There are also semi-permanent breakwaters and liftable coastal dams, seawater desalination and ecological circulation systems. Artificial intelligence Jarvis is in charge of the entire island, including direct drinking water faucets that are readily available and you have no idea where they are hidden. Various buildings that are perfectly hidden in the natural environment. If you don't pay attention, you may miss the destination you want to go. There are also other AR facilities and other technological equipment deployed throughout the island. However, due to the construction period, a considerable part of it has not been completed. But this is also quite shocking. This is the technology island designed by Tony Stark. The original purpose of its design is to hide technology in nature. It is a design that returns to nature, not a future design with a sense of cold steel everywhere. Because this is likely to be where Tony and Pepper will often live in the future, and Pepper doesn't like the texture of cold steel everywhere. Tony tailored this island for Pepper, who likes nature. When Luigi and others stepped on this island for the first time, Luigi couldn't help but whistled. The scenery here is so good, the azure blue water exudes a crystal blue color under the reflection of the sun. The green lawn is soft and comfortable to step on, and in the center of the island is a huge building complex. A building complex that combines Baroque and modern technology styles, and looks like a scene in a fantasy science fiction game. And not far away, Tony Stark is smiling and welcoming everyone with Pepper, "Welcome to my wedding. P.S. Daily tickets on Tuesday." Chapter 766 The One Who is Hurt the Most. Welcome everyone to my wedding. Tony Stark had a smile on his face, and it was obvious that he was in a good mood. And Pepper beside him also had the same smile on his face. In fact, Tony's wedding this time needed to be a little low-key according to his design. So in fact, not many guests were invited. The main people were almost all relatives and good friends of Tony and Pepper. The people participating on Tony's side included members of the Avengers and Coulson, an insurance salesman from S.H.I.E.L.D., several scientists and executives who were more important in the Stark group and had a good relationship with Tony. Then there were Luigi, Peter Parker, Thor and other people who were considered work partners and friends. Oh, of course, there were also Hank Girl Mindy and Little Wolf Girl Laura, who were chosen by Tony as Flower Girls. The two of them have been placed in the children's room by Pepper. Damon and Michael are not interested in attending the wedding, so only Frank is the guardian of the two girls to accompany them to this wedding. Luigi and Lan were the last to arrive in this group. Because after meeting Nick and dealing with the Winter Soldier issue, he accompanied Lan to buy evening gowns. Because the custom-made evening gowns could not be made in time for the wedding, after all, it was nearly 20 days in advance, and even if the tailor worked all night, it would be difficult to make the clothes look suitable and good-looking, so they could only purchase ready-made clothes. Luigi walked towards Tony with a smile, and handed the gift he had prepared long ago to Tony's hands. Tony Stark is getting married. It's really earth-shattering news. All major media around the world are going crazy. I heard that the 3 major American broadcasters have privately offered $1 million, and they are willing to pay this price as long as they can have high-definition images of your wedding. Luigi smiled, I think you should be careful whether someone leaks the details of your wedding for $1 million. Tony waved his hand nonchalantly. I believe there will not be such shameless people among my guests. Li Ji was skeptical. Really? There is a person here who once forced a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent into a desperate situation for $1 million, and made S.H.I.E.L.D. very embarrassed. Damn it. You're right, I need someone to keep an eye on Deadpool in a tight red uniform and an extremely ugly suit. Tony finally remembered this. He put the gift in Pepper's hands and left quickly. Li Ji smiled and said to Peibo, Congratulations, Peibo, happy wedding, and congratulations on becoming a mother soon. Lan also said along with Li Ji, Congratulations. Peibo's face was filled with a happy smile. Thank you. By the way, I have arranged a room for you. Here is your smart room card. Jarvis will lead the way for you. If you want to take a break, the bar below the room is open 24 hours a day. Captain Rogers and others have arrived. You can chat with them. Thank you, Peibo. Li Ji responded to Peibo. Then he took Lan's hand and walked in the direction of the arrow that suddenly appeared in front of him. This is the AR system that is spread all over the island. This way of guiding is inexplicably a bit like the automatic pathfinding in online games. Li Ji could only think so. By the way, Peibo, I want to ask, your wedding will be at noon tomorrow. Are all the people here except me and Lan? Li Ji asked the last question before leaving. I think Dr. Banner is the only one left on the guest list now. I invited him and his girlfriend Betty. Betty is the daughter of General Red Hulk Ross. They should meet in New York in 2 hours and then fly here on the special plane we arranged for them. Pepper answered Li Ji's question with a smile. As Pepper said, Dr. Banner and his girlfriend Betty are on their way to New York. In fact, Banner and Betty have not seen each other for a long time since their last separation. As the Hulk was hunted by the military and had to hide in Nepal. In order not to implicate Betty, Banner never contacted Betty again after the Battle of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. But later, Li Ji and Captain Rogers found Banner who was practicing in Nepal and persuaded him to join the Avengers of SHIELD. This gave him a public identity and was able to officially whitewash Banner's affairs. In this way, the military could not bypass SHIELD if they wanted to arrest Banner. The military, which suffered a loss in the lawsuit against Captain America, did not openly confront Rogers in the spirit of less trouble. The main reason is that General Ross, who has always been resentful of Banner, can't protect himself, and other generals really don't want to wade into this muddy water. This allows Dr. Banner to finally reunite with Betty, but because of the Eastern European Railway, Banner and Betty have to separate temporarily. Betty is very supportive of Banner's hosting of the Eastern European Super Railway project. Because like Banner, Betty is also an outstanding scientist. She and Banner have the same idea. They both believe that good technology should work hard to change the world and make the world a better place, instead of making the world worse. Betty is a woman with smooth black long hair, three-dimensional but unusually soft facial features, who looks like a legendary elf. Deep eyes and warm lips make her look gentle like a woman, but also have another strong meaning. Perhaps it is this characteristic that allows her to choose to stick to it in the most difficult times, waiting for Banner's turn. I have to say that Betty is lucky, she has waited for this day. Dr. Banner's flight would not land for another half an hour. In the waiting room, Betty was reading some books to kill time. She was going to go to the special plane arranged by Stark Group with Banner after meeting him at the airport. In fact, there were quite a few people waiting to pick up this flight. There were quite a few people on Betty's left and right. Beth was flipping through a book when she felt someone bump into her. She turned around and saw a disheveled man staring at her. Betty didn't react to who this man was for a while until he said, "Betty, it's me." This was a man with a unique low voice from smoking and drinking. Maybe he didn't stand out and would disappear in a crowd. But his voice was very recognizable. Rick Jones. Betty looked at the man in front of her with some surprise. Her expression was first surprise, and then in indescribable anger. How dare you appear in front of me? Who made Banner become like that? Who separated us? How dare you appear in front of me? Betty, listen to me. I'm sorry. I should have played the guitar in the bomb test area, which led to Banner's accident to save me. Believe me, I didn't want to hurt Banner. It was all an accident. He is my best friend, I swear. The man named Rick Jones swore. It was because he entered the danger zone of the explosion to play the guitar that Banner had to pull him into the bunker for refuge before the explosion began. In the end, Rick Jones was fine, and Banner became the Hulk. For Betty, Rick Jones was the culprit who caused the darkest years of her and Banner's life. And Rick Jones was indeed Banner's good friend, so Betty didn't tear Rick Jones into pieces because of anger. Rick Jones also regretted what he did back then, and he had not dared to contact Banner and Betty over the years. Even though Banner has been cleaned up now, Rick Jones dared not talk to his old friend on the phone. He has always felt guilty, and this guilt dared to keep him awake at night. He is still like this now, and today he stood in front of Betty because he felt that he had found a chance to atone for his sins. He pulled Betty and said, "Betty, whether you believe it or not, I have been thinking about how to help Banner all these years. And now I finally know how the accident of the gamma bomb happened. This is not Banner's fault at all. I got a message, an important message. It is related to Banner and Stark." Betty looked at Rick Jones quietly. Hydra Schmidt wanted to provoke the relationship between Tony and Banner, but he did not foolishly reveal the news directly to Banner. Because it is stupid to do so. Look at Banner's transformation into Green Giant. Who knows if he chose to forgive Tony Stark later? Or is Mr. Banner so generous that he doesn't care at all? So from the beginning, the goal of this plan was not simply to go to Banner. Who was hurt the most in Banner's gamma bomb test? Do you think it was Banner? You are totally wrong. The one who was really hurt was actually Betty, the woman who had been silently supporting Banner behind him. Not only did she have to face the fact that her boyfriend turned into a monster, but she also had to struggle to balance between her boyfriend and her father. Such a life was exhausting. And this was not the worst. The worst thing was that her father had also turned into a monster, and the beginning of all this came from that damn bomb accident. Betty was undoubtedly the most injured person in the whole incident, but she still had to play the role of healing others. She had to soothe the pain of her boyfriend and father, and she could only lick her own pain deep in her heart. Because she couldn't blame anyone, she couldn't blame Banner, nor could she blame General Ross. If a man's hatred can sometimes dissipate like the wind, then a woman's hatred is even longer and longer than you can imagine. P.S. Daily football tickets. I had a serious card tonight. But I finally wrote it out. I actually wrote about the character of Betty a long time ago. When Banner was still in Nepal, Banner thought about bringing his girlfriend over. Betty was here, so this character didn't appear suddenly. In addition, I think many people didn't expect Hydra to pass the buck like this. Well, hand in your votes and ask for a subscription. Today's subscription has dropped. Chapter 767 Singles Dance. In Tony's Technology Island. The Baroque style mixed with the future technology style of the building is very beautiful and covers a large area. Jarvis Intelligent AI is the butler who manages everything on the entire island. At the same time, there are about 30 intelligent home robots responsible for taking care of the entire island. This is a byproduct of the development and testing of the iron armor. There is no combat capability, and there is no need to use expensive titanium alloy or titanium alloy, let alone the nano-metal technology newly developed by Tony. High-strength stainless steel and engineering plastics can make these robots. They are responsible for the daily maintenance of the entire island and provide basic services. For example, just like now, there is a very beautiful bar under the luxurious guest rooms of the Technology Island. Next to the bar is a huge swimming pool. And there are several such mechanical butlers providing services in the bar. They shuttle between guests, providing drinks and meals. Speaking of marriage, we have to mention that it is very popular in the West, and even has become a cultural tradition. That is the legendary singles dance, cocktail party. In fact, it is not only East Asian countries that value the culture of family unity. Attaching importance to family is actually the mainstream culture and value orientation of the whole world. The United States is very open on one side, but very conservative on the other. Single people can flirt with each other without restraint. It is very normal for men to flirt with girls or women to flirt with men. No one can blame you for this attitude towards life. Because since you're single, you don't need to be responsible for anything you do, as long as you can pass this level. But once you get married, it's completely different. Even in the United States, which is known for its openness, cheating and betrayal in marriage are things that go against mainstream values. Both men and women will be blamed for this. This is something that doesn't matter whether it is forgiven or not, but it is something that goes against the whole social customs. In fact, some parts of the United States are very conservative. In some small places, Because of religious and doctrinal issues, if there is something like cheating in marriage, maybe there is no need to use the law. The residents of the town can exclude you to death. There is a real case. A similar thing happened in a small town in Arizona. This is not alarmist. So during the wedding process, you swear to bring happiness to your partner for the rest of your life, and you must tolerate, accept and respect each other regardless of poverty or wealth, health or illness, and never leave each other for the rest of your life. What is proposed here is not just a formality for you to go through, but a question from the heart. Of course, if you are an irresponsible person, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, this question is meaningless. So marriage is quite restrictive, especially for a former playboy like Tony Stark. But there is another very important program before the wedding, that is the bachelor party. This is the carnival of the last single moment. You can indulge yourself tonight, but after tonight, please take care of yourself. You need to bind yourself and never cross the moral bottom line in the future. Well, I must say that a bachelor party is not only held by the man, but also by the woman. Both the bride and groom will hold it. And both parties will never cross the line to control each other, at least not tonight. Just like now, in the bar on the men's guest building, Tony is holding his bachelor party. And in the women's guest building is Peppers. The music in the bar was very rhythmic, and the supermodels from the modeling agency that Tony had invited were dancing on the dance floor to the beat of the music. Luigi noticed that several people he knew were surrounded by several female models. Isn't this place a bit too much for women? Luigi declined a supermodel who approached him, even though she was indeed breathtakingly beautiful. He walked to Captain Rogers, who also looked a little embarrassed, and asked, "What do you think, Captain?" "What?" Rogers didn't hear what Luigi was saying because the music was too loud. And with Rogers' beauty, more than a dozen beautiful and hot female supermodels had approached him. Some even boldly leaned on Rogers and groped him. Yes, it was indeed groping. Don't think that only men harassing women is called sexual harassment. In fact, it is mutual. For example, a man with a good face and figure like Captain Rogers has a huge killing power on women. It's the same reason why men can't move their legs when they see a beautiful woman. After Rogers hurriedly chased away the women who were groping him and finally found a quiet place, Luigi walked over to him and started chatting with him. Oh my god, Tony's bachelor party was a bit crazy. How much did he spend? Rogers took a sip of beer and looked at the people twisting on the dance floor. Carlson, who looked honest, was dancing with a beautiful girl in his arms, with an indescribable smile on his face, looking a bit vulgar. Deadpool was sitting in a circular booth, with at least 4 beauties around him. He was good at speaking, and he made the beauties tremble with a few words. A certain Alaska was looking for food in the self-service area. The more normal ones looked like Blade and Iron Fist, Luke Cage and Thor. The 4 of them were drinking and playing cards with another group of people. It seemed that their wins and losses were a bit big. Luigi noticed that they had at least several thousand or even nearly $10,000 on the table. He must have spent a lot of money. The supermodels he invited are almost close to the level of Victoria's Secret angels. Luigi could only admire such a feast. He is indeed the world's top playboy. In fact, to hold such a banquet and invite so many socialites to show their support, it is not enough to just spend money. If you are not on this circle for a long time and have established a good prestige and credit in this circle, others will generally ignore you. In this way, can it be proved from another aspect that Tony Stark was once a complete bastard? Rogers took a bottle of sparkling wine from the passing service robot and handed it to Luigi. Luigi, thank you. To be honest, Carlson is very obsessed with one of the Victoria's Secret angels. I heard from Natasha that he and Hawkeye once used the SHIELD mainframe computer to hack into the Victoria's Secret Angels broadcast signal while on duty. They used more than 100 screens in the SHIELD headquarters to check all the camera positions of the Victoria's Secret Angels show at that time. Carlson vowed to marry a Victoria's Secret Angel as his wife. Roger seemed to be a little drunk, or he was happy after drinking. He accidentally revealed a big secret that should not be told. Luigi looked at Carlson, who looked like an insurance salesman, with some surprise. He could not tell that this honest man was so wild and ambitious in his heart. Marry a Victoria's Secret angel? It seems a bit difficult. After all, you are Carlson, not Leonardo. Note: Captain, the Winter Soldier issue has been dealt with. Luigi whispered a few words in Roger's ear. After listening, Rogers patted Luigi's shoulder with satisfaction. I think your handling is very good. I have nothing to say. There is nothing to criticize. Rogers toasted Leegee with a glass of wine, and Leegee also toasted back. Captain Rogers, do you have money? Cash. Just as the two were drinking, a hurried voice sounded from behind Rogers. It was a woman, Behu, one of the Avengers. She was a college student, so she didn't want to reveal her identity to other people in the public. Even when she attended Tony's wedding and dance, she wore her mask. Rogers looked at Behu in surprise. A little, what's wrong? He counted out about $2,000 in cash from his body, and before he finished speaking, Behu took it away. Lend it to me first, Captain. I'll pay you back when I get my salary. Damn, there's a new guy at the gambling table over there, called Lan or something. She won a lot of money from us. Damn. Natasha is almost losing her money. Behu kept mumbling about this, and Leegee had a strange expression on his face. Natasha lost all the season tickets for the New York Yankees next season to her. You didn't see the look in Natasha's eyes. She was almost ready to eat people. Captain Rogers looked at Behu in surprise. Even so, you still want to gamble with her? Natasha is the best gambler in S.H.I.E.L.D. No, I won't go on stage. I only buy the banker and the player. I want to win the money back. I have a pair of younger brothers and sisters who need to pay for school tuition, and my aunt still needs my help. I need money in many places. Behu said with a sigh. What's wrong with your aunt? I've never heard of her. As a leader, Rogers still cared about his subordinates. She's divorced. This is her second failed marriage. But the real damn thing is that because her income is relatively high, she needs to pay alimony to both ex-husbands. Damn gender equality. I'm going to save some money for her lawsuit. Behu muttered and finally walked away. Rogers opened his mouth and finally looked at Leegee and said, in our era, no man would ask a woman for money to live, especially asking for alimony from his ex-wife. This is really. Rogers said it twice, this is really. But he couldn't express a suitable opinion. Leegee patted Rogers on the shoulder. Captain, get used to it. Didn't you hear it just now? Gender equality. Okay, gender equality. Let me tell you one more thing. If Natasha really loses her temper, you'd better let Lan be careful. Rogers replied to Leegee jokingly. Just as the two were chatting, a familiar voice came from the side. Dr. Banner asked Captain Rogers and Leegee with a serious face, where is Tony Stark? P.S. Note, Leonardo changes girlfriends very frequently, and each of his girlfriends is a Victoria's Secret angel. Chapter 768 IOU. Stark Technology Island. Below the main building is the place with the highest security level on the entire island. Tony has set up a series of passwords here. Even Pepper Potts can't get in, at least not now. But maybe in the future, when Tony forgets the password to get in, he will have to ask Pepper Potts for it. This is a laboratory designed by Tony on the island. He plans to move the laboratory and the Iron Armor Smart Factory in Los Angeles here. However, the construction has not started yet, and the things are still in Los Angeles. So the whole laboratory is empty, and the footsteps of people walking here have a big echo. This kind of echo is very annoying after listening to it for a long time, especially the echoing and echoing, which makes people feel numb. And this annoying footsteps are now constantly echoing, and the people sitting inside are not in the mood to complain. Mixed in the footsteps is the sound of chewing food, which makes people even more upset. The sound of Kaz Kaz keeps ringing. Tony Stark finally couldn't help it. Can you not eat, Thor? Thor, who was sitting quietly eating, was a little angry at Tony's words, especially when Tony's words were mixed with swear words. Thor stood up instantly, and his huge body of more than 1.9 meters instantly made Tony, who was only about 1.7 meters tall, take 2 steps back with an overwhelming advantage. Tony felt as if a black bear suddenly stood up in front of him. Tony pointed to the food on the plate and said, Tony Stark, you got into trouble yourself. We are here to help you solve the problem. You'd better be polite. Tony also found that the tone of his words just now seemed a bit excessive. He raised his hands in surrender. Sorry. Okay, I just went too far. Dr. Bruce Banner, who had been pacing in the empty room and making noise, finally stopped. He looked at Tony and Thor and said, don't talk about anything else, find a suitable solution. Leegee and Captain Rogers were sitting in the corner thinking, a suitable solution? Easier said than done. Why are they all gathered together, and look serious? Even angry? It all started when Dr. Banner came to the island to find Tony Stark. Where is Tony? I want to see him. Just when Lee Ji and Rogers were chatting casually at Tony's bachelor party, Dr. Banner appeared with a serious face. His expression was out of tune with the atmosphere of the scene, as if he was not here to attend a wedding at all. Or to put it bluntly, his terrible expression was suitable for attending a solemn funeral. This made the two people who were originally planning to greet him cordially swallow back what they were about to say. I'll go find Tony. Captain Rogers nodded to Banner. Lee Ji took a glass of dark beer from the server robot next to him and handed it to Dr. Banner. Thank you. Dr. Banner still maintained basic politeness. He drank a whole glass of dark beer, about 1 liter, in one gulp. This wild drinking style was incompatible with his gentle and elegant manner. Lee Ji asked carefully, Dr. Banner? What happened? Banner barely moved the corners of his mouth, but he couldn't make himself laugh in the end. He gave up trying to make himself smile, because Banner found it really difficult to do this now. He could only say in a serious tone, it's complicated, I'll talk about it later. After that, Banner stopped talking. For Dr. Banner, who was completely silent, Lee Ji couldn't get any information from him. Captain Rogers found Tony who was gambling at the gambling table. Correct the mistake, it was Tony who was gambling in the last chapter, not Thor. I typed the name wrong, and brought Thor who was eating and drinking with him. Bringing Thor was to prevent accidents. Dr. Banner's expression was very bad. It seems that he might be a little disadvantageous to Tony. Captain Rogers didn't dare to take this risk. Captain Rogers knew very well how strong Banner was. The heroic image of that punch that day still lingers in his mind. Now the only one who can fight Banner with a single punch and is sure to win 50-50 is Thor. So this god of thunder must be taken away, so Thor, who was eating, was dragged away by Captain Rogers with his large plate. In the laboratory of Tech Island. So Banner, what's going on? Tony looked at Banner with a dazed look. Such a Banner was a bit scary. As for what Banner wanted him to do, Tony really didn't know. Dr. Banner leaned against the wall, crossed his arms, and asked in a serious tone, remember that accident? The accident that caused my Hulk mutation. You were also involved in the project at that time. Tony nodded, yes, what's wrong? Dr. Banner frowned, you really don't remember anything. Tony thought for a long time and didn't figure out what Banner meant. He could only shake his head, I don't understand what you are saying, Banner, can you say it clearly? The two of them were talking like a witty conversation, and the three audiences who were listening were confused. They didn't know what they were talking about at all. Dr. Banner looked at Tony deeply. At that time, I was the leader of the military's gamma bomb experiment. When the experiment entered the third stage, our project encountered a difficult bottleneck. The delay in breaking through made the military's senior management very annoyed. So they invited Tony Stark, the most important weapons contractor of the military at that time, to help. Tony nodded, that's the case. We didn't get along well at that time, right Tony? Dr. Banner asked, looking into Tony's eyes. Tony smiled awkwardly, oh, you can say that. Actually, if I look at it today, I also hate myself 10 years ago. I was a serious alcoholic, and my alcohol dependence was almost in the late stage. I was drunk every day, and even had a few glasses of single malt whiskey before the experiment. The whole lab was filled with the smell of alcohol coming from me. That was really the worst time of my life. If Pepper hadn't helped me get rid of my alcohol dependence, I would have died many years ago. Tony talked about his dark history, a history that is difficult to look back on but must be faced. Dr. Banner looked at Tony and moved his lips. Yes, Tony Stark at that time was not worthy of the title of scientist. You were just a drunkard. You made weapons and resold them at will. You were a person who was completely unrespectable. You could even say you were a scumbag, both in private life and in public conduct. Hey. Tony was not very happy to be told this by Banner. Let the past go with the wind. I have changed now, okay? Iron Man has done a lot of good things, okay? I donated to many completely non-profit schools and built many low-profit non-profit hospitals. I am atonement and correction for the mistakes I made in the past, right? Just like the super high-speed railway you built in Eastern Europe, I also contributed a lot, okay? Tony's defense for himself was quite powerful. No matter how scumbag Tony Stark was 10 years ago, that was in the past. The past should indeed be dispersed. Since at least the good things Tony has done over the years must be more than the wrong things he did back then, and they are more important. Iron Man has become the most important force driving the world. Dr. Banner nodded when he heard what Tony said. Yes, Tony. You have done a great job in the past 2 years. Otherwise, we would not be sitting here quietly chatting, but would have to face my fist. Hey. Tony took a step back unconsciously. Li Ji and others moved their bodies slightly. The angry Banner was not joking. Tony, you were addicted to alcohol at the time. As for whether you took drugs, I don't know. But you drank until you blacked out every day and often forgot what happened the day before, so I think you may have forgotten one thing. You modified the gamma bomb parameters I set at the time, which led to an accident in the 3rd stage of the gamma bomb. And it was this accident that caused me to become the Hulk. Dr. Banner's tone was extremely calm, as if he was not talking about his own affairs, but just talking about what happened to a friend far away. But the news revealed in this calm tone made everyone fidget. Li Ji and Roger's eyes widened, and they looked at Tony in disbelief. Thor stopped eating when he heard the news. His eyes flickered between Tony and Dr. Banner. Tony was shocked. Wait. Doctor, you can't just put the blame on me. This is not what you should do. And I don't remember doing it at all. Did you make a mistake? Tony couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. He was trying to defend himself. But in his heart, he felt vaguely that this was true. Dr. Banner looked at the somewhat flustered Tony and said lightly, because you were addicted to alcohol at the time, alcohol paralyzed your brain. You did many things, but you forgot them. In fact, I have been recalling the details of my gamma bomb making over the years. I want to find out what I did wrong. In fact, I thought of some things 2 years ago, some details that I had forgotten. You modified my bomb, but it was out of good intentions. Because according to my design, the bomb detonated at that time might have killed half of New Mexico's lives instantly. Banner said these words calmly, so it's nothing for me to mutate and suffer alone, at least it's better than half of the people in New Mexico dying. From this point of view, I should thank you. This shocked everyone present again. What the hell is this? Is Banner here for revenge or gratitude? Especially Tony was even more confused when he heard it. What? Did he accidentally save half of New Mexico back then? Why don't he remember it? Do you want to hold a press conference and let the president give you a medal of bravery? To commend his great contribution. Actually, I went through a lot of things in Nepal. It made me understand a lot, and also made me understand the meaning of Hulk. From this point of view, I have no resentment towards you, Tony. Dr. Banner's words finally made everyone feel relieved, especially Tony. He finally felt relieved and patted Banner on the shoulder. You scared me just now, buddy. But Dr. Banner's words were not finished yet, which made everyone's heart lifted again. Just because I can let it go doesn't mean that others can let it go, especially the woman who was hurt the most in this incident. Betty, she knows all this, and I don't know where she got the news from. I haven't told her about this. She has been struggling to hold on all these years. There is a thorn in her heart, a thorn that will cause pain for her whole life if it is not pulled out. Her father, General Ross, has also mutated now. Do you know how difficult it is for Betty to face life with a smile? She can't face you, and doesn't want to see you, Tony Stark. So she didn't come to your wedding today. Dr. Banner said this in a low voice, and what he said was the truth. And everyone can understand it. A woman is already so strong, what else can you expect? But if hatred is not removed, it will grow like weeds. This is something that must be faced. It is useless to escape. Dr. Banner looked at Tony and said, think of a way to let Betty remove this thorn. Tony forced a smile and said, I will. I owe you this, Banner. Ps. Daily vote request. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 769, Past Events. In the Gamma Bomb experiment, there was a conflict between Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. And this conflict was quite intense. The two had conflicts in the laboratory more than once. The reason for the outbreak of this conflict was very simple, because Banner looked down on Tony Stark, who drank every day. Well, in fact, most people don't like alcoholics, especially alcoholics who get drunk and go crazy, right? So it's not difficult to understand why Dr. Banner hated Tony Stark at the time. At that time, Dr. Banner thought that Tony was just a second-generation master who lived by relying on some cleverness and the shadow left by his father. He was not a serious scientist at all. Dr. Banner had this expression of disdain on his face, and when had the proud Tony Stark ever been slapped in the face like this? He couldn't stand Banner's sarcasm. So in the gamma bomb experiment at the time, it was said that the two joined forces, but in reality they still did their own things. Or to put it simply, Dr. Banner did not allow Tony Stark to interfere in his own experiments. "I can't let a drunkard touch my files and documents, no discussion." These were Dr. Banner's original words at the time. With Tony's character, it can be expected that when he heard this, his face was so bad. So he simply ignored Dr. Banner later. "Well, you are awesome, you are powerful, you are invincible. If you are so powerful, you can make a gamma bomb by yourself. I don't care." Tony was waiting for Dr. Banner to make a fool of himself with the mentality of watching a joke. Because he had read the information and knew how difficult this plan was. Dr. Banner did not have a smart enough helper to help him solve those complex algorithm problems. Of course, the smart enough helper Tony said refers to people with the same IQ as himself or Banner. Only people at their level can confirm each other's shortcomings, and researchers in other laboratories cannot point out the mistakes made by Banner. Because their level is not up to this level at all. Tony was waiting for Banner to beg him when he was desperate. At that time, he was pretending to be strong in front of Banner, and then slapping Banner in the face. This is the only way to vent your anger. Tony drank malt liquor and thought about these things happily. Just as he was drinking fine wine and living a dissolute life, a bad news suddenly came from the front. Dr. Banner has broken through the bottleneck of the third stage, and the project can be started. Poof! Tony sprayed out all the malt liquor. How is it possible? How is it possible? Without my help, how could that arrogant idiot complete this? Should he kneel down in front of me and admit his mistakes after he was desperate, and then beg me to help him? Only then can I humiliate his mother severely. Tony, who was half drunk, thought so. He didn't believe that Banner could complete this experiment independently. Or he didn't want to believe that Banner could complete it, because if Banner completed it, it would prove that Banner was smarter than himself. It doesn't matter whether Tony Stark is there or not. For Tony Stark at that time, this matter was intolerable. Tony was still very young nearly 10 years ago, and he was so young and arrogant. Coupled with excessive addiction to alcohol, Tony had all kinds of strange fantasies in his mind. At some point, Tony even thought that he was the protagonist of this world, that the world should revolve around him, that he was the center of the earth or even the universe, and that he was the son of destiny. Well, maybe Tony Stark should take medicine. But this was indeed his state at the time. So when he couldn't communicate with Dr. Banner, Tony didn't want to communicate with him, and Banner didn't want to pay attention to him. Tony chose to sneak into the laboratory and steal Dr. Banner's information. Because the experimental data was already available, the gamma bomb had entered the actual testing stage. As a laboratory for storing theoretical data, it was not so important. Anyway, as an insider, Tony easily got Dr. Banner's information. "You must have a problem, you must have a problem. There must be something wrong. Just wait and see, Bruce Banner, I'm going to find it out and hit you hard in the face." Tony Stark began to check Banner's experimental data with a picky mentality. Just as Tony began to check and calculate various data, Banner had already informed the military general General Ross that the parameters of the bomb could be set. In fact, the manufacture of this gamma bomb uses a modular design, which can be regarded as an innovation. Except for the core structure itself, everything else can be added or reduced. In this way, the bomb can be easily expanded from the tactical level to the strategic level, or vice versa. The advantage of this design is that the entire bomb becomes very flexible and can be adjusted according to different combat purposes. The most important thing is that the maintenance cost is greatly reduced, which is very critical. You must know that storing nuclear weapons is very expensive, and it is not something you can just put somewhere after making it. Take the United States as an example. Although the United States has the largest reserve of atomic bombs in the world, it does not store any hydrogen bombs. Micro and small tactical levels for small targets are not included. Because storing hydrogen bombs is very troublesome, because of the configuration of hydrogen bombs, it requires a lot of money to maintain. The only country in the world that still has a permanent reserve of strategic level hydrogen bombs is China across the west coast. This is also one of the reasons why the relationship between China and the United States has always been delicate. Although China's atomic bombs are not worth mentioning compared to the United States, China's hydrogen bombs can be stored for a long time as military supplies because of the different configuration of hydrogen bombs. China has also become the only country in the world that has long-term reserves of strategic hydrogen bombs. Other countries, including the United States, need to make them on the spot. The power between atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs is incomparable, especially in strategic deterrence. It is also because of this that the two countries in the Pacific have always maintained a delicate balance of power. The top leaders of the United States are fed up with the feeling that they are not in control. The modular design of the gamma bomb is a way for them to seek improvements in strategic weapons. Because of the modular design, the third-stage gamma bomb is assembled very quickly. During the time when Tony stayed up late for 2 consecutive nights to review the materials, the third-stage gamma bomb had been assembled and transported to the explosion center of the explosion test site, ready to start the test the next day. 6 hours before the test, Tony Stark finally got up from his desk. He was shocked. Bruce Banner is a madman. He installed a suppressor on the gamma bomb to control the power of the bomb, but he foolishly overlooked the scale effect. Compared to the scale of the third phase of the strategic gamma bomb experiment, this suppressor will become the catalyst of the entire bomb. Its power can kill half of the people in New Mexico. Tony got this result, and his hands were shaking. I don't know if it was because of fear or because he drank too much. No, I want to notify him. At this time, Tony could no longer care about his personal grudges with Banner, because if this bomb exploded, it would be a national disaster. Damn, he didn't answer my call, and he actually put me on the blacklist. Tony couldn't dial Banner's phone, so he could only send Banner a message pointing out that there was a problem with his experimental data. Tony was waiting for Banner to reply to his message quickly. But on the other end of the phone, Banner, who had worked for many days and finally got to sleep in bed, took it over and took a look after hearing the phone prompt tone. Whose message is this? Betty pestered Banner, whispering softly. Banner deleted the message expressionlessly. Nothing, just from a boring person. Maybe he is drunk and showing his butt and making sarcastic gestures. No need to read it. Banner wrapped himself in a quilt and hugged Betty and fell asleep again. Tony was a little crazy because he didn't get a reply for a long time. He drank half a bottle of whiskey again. He felt that he couldn't wait any longer. Banner, this unreliable guy, still needed to save the world by himself in the end. Tony drank the remaining half bottle of whiskey, and then drove drunkenly towards the explosion center test site of the gamma bomb. He had to adjust the parameters of the entire bomb before the explosion. Sure enough, I am the protagonist of this world. Tony thought so drunkenly. In the laboratory of Technology Island, everyone looked at Tony Stark in disbelief. The story told by Banner was a bit unexpected. Even the shameless Tony couldn't stand it. Wait, is the person in this story really me? Why do I feel that I am not very similar? You must have exaggerated it. Tony said to Banner, and his expression was a little embarrassed. Banner didn't care, you know whether it is like this or not. Tony. Banner continued, it doesn't matter what happened. As I said before, we need to pull out the thorn in Betty's heart. I think you can do this. Since you dare to play a fake in front of 7 billion people around the world, I think this is not difficult for you. As soon as Dr. Banner finished speaking, everyone else's eyes were focused on Li Ji. Wait, why are you all looking at me like this? I'm not the protagonist of this matter. It's not me who caused Dr. Banner to mutate, and it's not me who caused General Ross to mutate. Why are you looking at me with such weird eyes? Li Ji shook his body uncomfortably. Tony walked to Li Ji and patted his shoulder. You can do it. Huh? What do you mean I can do it? What the hell is it? This has nothing to do with me. Exclamation mark. Chapter 770 Banner's Weakness. Everyone was looking at him like this, and Li Ji felt a little uncomfortable for some reason. He stood up and walked around. You can't look at me like this. I didn't do these things. I just came to the wedding to eat for free. Tony strode towards Li Ji and grabbed his shoulder. Can you help me find a favor? Thinking about all the crazy plans you had before, I don't think this is difficult for you. Anyway, you have cheated so many people, how difficult is it to cheat a woman again? Hey! Li Ji shouted dissatisfiedly, what do you mean by cheating so many people? Okay, I used the wrong words, you know what I mean. Since Dr. Banner's girlfriend Betty can't let it go, then find a way to comfort her. No matter what method you use, what resources you mobilize, you are free to do it. Just think of it as what I owe Dr. Banner before. Tony looked back at Banner. I can't let a rift between you and your girlfriend be created because of me. At the same time, I don't want you, Dr. Banner, to quit our team halfway. We can't make things too difficult for you. Banner smiled. Is the current Tony Stark so gentle and considerate of others? Tony spread his hands. I can't help it. Who told me to get married tomorrow? Men with families are different, not to mention that Pepper is pregnant. In a few months, I will be a father. This is different for me. The different forms of a man's life, boy, big boy, old boy, and the branch option is father, which is probably the ultimate form. I may be evolving to the last ultimate form of life. Tony said seriously. Speaking of Tony's marriage, Leegee temporarily changed the topic. Okay, Tony. Dr. Banner's problem cannot be solved in a day or two. Let's talk about tomorrow's wedding first. Have you chosen the witness? Tony nodded and said to everyone in the room, of course, my savior Dr. Ethan. He is a fair and kind man, and it is very suitable for him to be the witness. Leegee nodded without comment. In fact, after meeting Nick last time, Leegee also commissioned Nick to secretly investigate Ethan. Nick, who is hiding in the dark, is very suitable for this. What about the ring? Leegee mentioned a very critical point. He is still missing one of the 10 magic rings. Wearing the 9 ring gloves always feels that something is missing, just like the 9 magic rings ruled by the Supreme Ring in the Lord of the Rings. You find a way to get the ring back. Have you chosen who will be the best man to help you deliver the ring tomorrow? Leegee raised this important question. Tony curled his lips and said, I'm just about to come back tonight. Jarvis is scanning the ring. I have to work overtime to make an identical ring so that there won't be any flaws. This is good news, but Tony's choice of person to deliver the ring is unexpected. As for the person who will deliver the ring, I think there's a good candidate. Tony said with a smile, a researcher who supports the Horizon Foundation and is also your friend, Mr. Peter Parker. What do you think of this candidate? What? Not only Leegee was confused, but others were also confused. Among the people present, only Leegee and Thor were most familiar with Peter, and they couldn't guess why Tony chose him. As for Dr. Banner and Captain Rogers, they were even more confused. To be honest, Rogers always thought that Tony would choose himself to do this. What's so surprising? I think he is a very suitable candidate. Look, he is very experienced. Wasn't it him who gave Harry Osborn the ring at his engagement party last time? I think his movements in delivering the ring are very skilled and graceful. Tony said this seriously. Leegee was thinking, how skilled does it take to give a ring? Anyway, Peter Parker was inexplicably chosen to be the best man to give the ring. Compared to him, he was also confused. Although Peter and Tony had some contacts in the Horizon Foundation and had lunch together a few times, their relationship was definitely not that good. What exactly prompted Tony to make this decision? This has always been an unsolved mystery. Until one day many years later, when Tony was already an octogenarian, he told his granddaughter this shocking secret. Why did you choose Spider-Man as my best man? It's not because of how good our relationship was at that time. In fact, I looked around and found that there was no one shorter than me. So I could only choose Peter Parker. That day was my wedding, and I had to be the protagonist. How could a princess marry a knight who is taller, stronger and more handsome than the knight? Flowers also need green leaves to match. After hearing the news, the old Parker was furious and said that he would never play the game StarCraft 17, Galactic Age Online with Tony again. Of course, all this is a story for later. After Leegee roughly understood Tony's wedding arrangements, he pretended to yawn. Tony, you should go back to play cards. I'm a little sleepy, so I'll go to bed first. Now Leegee's head is a mess. He hasn't completely sorted out the love-hate relationship between Tony and Banner, and he hasn't completely figured out how to let Betty let go of the hatred in her heart. He needs to sort out his thoughts first and then think about how to deal with this matter. But Betty has endured so much anger over the years, and she must find a suitable vent to vent her anger. As for who to find? Leegee didn't think of it for a while. Of course, it would be best for him to go back and have a sleep, and then this group of people will hold a meeting to solve this matter. This is the most perfect. Leegee wanted to leave, but Banner stopped him. Jason, Tony's wedding is over. But we haven't finished talking about what we just did. Well, the escape plan failed. Okay, okay, okay. Leiji shook his hands weakly. How difficult can it be to let a woman vent her resentment? Dr. Banner, you can control the power of the Hulk now, right? You don't need to mutate, right? You don't even transform into the Hulk anymore, right? Dr. Banner touched his face and said uncertainly, in a way, it is true. In a way. Rogers noticed a key in Dr. Banner's words. Actually, I will still become Hulk under certain circumstances, but for some reason, my power has been swapped with Hulk's. I am Hulk, and Hulk is me. Bruce Banner revealed a big secret. Bruce Banner has Hulk's power, and Hulk has Bruce Banner's power. In this way, even if Hulk loses his mind and gets angry, he can't wreak havoc. You can't expect a scientist who has been in the laboratory for a long time to have much power, right? Anyway, I couldn't even lift anything over 50 kilograms when I was young. Dr. Banner smiled awkwardly. Leiji imagined the scene of Hulk's transformation. A green giant who was more than 3 or 4 meters tall, with muscles as solid and hard as marble, roared angrily. Like a dragon. He was very angry, so he started to wreak havoc. He smashed down with his fist as big as a car, and then, nothing happened. Puff. Leiji thought this scene was a bit too beautiful just by imagining it. After enduring for a long time, Leiji took back the picture he imagined. He looked at Dr. Banner and asked, well, this result is also very bad. If Captain Rogers lets Betty give her some intensive training, she should be able to defeat the irrational Hulk, right? Rogers raised his eyebrows. If the Hulk only has the power of Bruce Banner, then there is no problem. Well, the key for us now is that in addition to Banner, Ms. Betty has another relative, General Ross, who has also mutated because of this incident. If Dr. Banner can make General Ross regain his sanity, then the problem is half solved. Banner nodded. Actually, I have been studying it. My method may not be suitable for General Ross, but maybe I can help Ross through other paths. Of course, I need to talk face to face with a project leader who is studying the Red Hulk mutation serum before I can get enough intelligence. Tony waved his hand. No problem. I will arrange for Dr. Reed at the moon base to talk to you as soon as possible. Reed Charles is the fantastic Mr. Rubberman in the Fantastic Four. In the previous article, he went to the moon with the Fantastic Four to establish a lunar base. Leiji nodded. Then there is another point. How did Ms. Betty know about this? Logically, she shouldn't know all this. We will do our best to investigate this matter and see if there is someone behind it. We will find them out. In this way, Ms. Betty will have a suitable vent. Dr. Banner proposed another possibility. What if it can't be found? I mean, what if it is really just my friend Rick Jones who found it himself? Leiji cleared his throat. Well, it doesn't matter. We can only let a certain organization that is about to be eliminated from the historical stage play a role. Everyone looked at Leiji strangely. Of course, except for one person, a certain Elaster fell asleep while they were discussing these topics that he was not interested in at all. Snore, snore, snore. Snoring loudly, sweet dreams. God, no need to worry so much. How happy it is to eat, drink and sleep every day. Usually go to play and take care of children, write about the experience of conservation. Occasionally play the role of dragon warrior to do justice. Thor's life doesn't have so many struggles. He has made up his mind now. He just wants to be a brave god who faces his heart. P.S. Daily votes. Chapter 771 Wedding Ceremony. Schmidt, who was far away in Bermuda, didn't know what happened on Stark Technology Island in New Zealand, nor did he know the details of what happened there, let alone that several guys in the Illuminati had already made a plan about how to let Ms. Betty vent her anger, and she had already chosen a target for her to vent her anger. This is an organization that Leiji and others have announced to withdraw from the stage of history. Schmidt, it's definitely not Hydra. Schmidt is still waiting for Dr. Bruce Banner to turn into the Hulk and make a scene at Tony Stark's wedding. But Schmidt is destined to be disappointed. In any war strategy, the accuracy of information is always the first. For example, if you use a strategy of alienation, you can't alienate two people who have nothing to do with each other, or even don't know each other. In this way, you completely alienate the wrong target. And Schmidt obviously misjudged the target, because Bruce Banner will no longer easily transform into the Hulk because of anger. Or let's be more precise, even if Dr. Banner transforms into the Hulk, green, it's useless. Although he is a huge man, how much damage can the Hulk, green, who can't even carry 2 bags of rice cause? It is estimated that he will just break the champagne tower at the wedding banquet. Schmidt is still waiting for big news in Bermuda. How much damage will it cause if the Hulk brings Stark's wedding banquet? Maybe Stark will be killed directly, and then Captain America and other heroes may also suffer heavy casualties. If things go well, maybe the world will be in chaos without me doing it myself. At that time, it will be the time for me, the Red Skull, to rule the world again. The Red Skull Schmidt's skull has a smile on his face, which is particularly scary. He is praying that everything goes smoothly. On Stark Technology Island, everything is going smoothly. Today's weather is very good, with plenty of sunshine. The December sunshine does not feel hot at all when shining on people, but is very warm. A few white clouds float leisurely in the blue sky. The deep blue sea extends to the place where the sea and the sky meet to form a line. Occasionally, seagulls flew overhead and chirped. The most rare thing was that today was still a windless day. This day was perfect for holding a grand wedding on the island. Today was Tony Stark's big day, and the entire island was decorated almost exaggeratedly. There were streamers and hanging silk everywhere, and all kinds of cute puppets seemed to appear on the lawn of the island overnight. A huge velvet rabbit was particularly spectacular. The wedding scene with pure white as the main theme seemed to appear suddenly. Anyway, Li Ji didn't find this place at all after he arrived on the island. In fact, this place is not far from the main building complex where everyone lives. It looks like it was built overnight. Li Ji reminded himself that this is indeed possible. Jarvis commanded dozens of household robots to do a lot of things in one night, as long as the materials were prepared in advance. Large white roses were decorated on both sides of the wedding scene, and the air was filled with a sweet smell of happiness. The music played elegantly by the pianist came from the grand piano. Li Ji and Lan sat in the audience, surrounded by people who were familiar to Li Ji. For example, Thor, Daniel Iron Fist and his good friend Luke Cage. There is also Blade not far away, White Tiger, etc., and many others. Oh, yes, there is also Natasha, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Natasha, who has always been graceful and beautiful, looks a little haggard today. Li Ji only took a look at her from a distance and found that Natasha looked very tired, and even had some signs of black eyes. He approached Lan gently and whispered in her ear, "I heard that you won a lot last night." Lan raised her eyebrows. "It's okay, not much?" Li Ji glanced at the haggard Natasha in front of him on the left, and shook his head, looking at Natasha. "It seems that what you won is not much?" Lan secretly glanced at Natasha, and then couldn't help but smiled softly. This can't be blamed on me, who told her to keep raising the bet. She lost so much that she wanted to turn things around, but she is not good at gambling. Who can she blame? Li Ji asked with some embarrassment. "Then how much did you win from her?" Lan touched her beautiful fingers and counted. "Not much, only about $50,000 in cash. She didn't bring much cash, and she borrowed some from others. But I won some other interesting things, including full season tickets for the NFL New York Giants next season and tickets to the Super Bowl, all are VIP seats. Full season tickets for the American Professional Baseball League New York Yankees next season and tickets to the finals, these are also VIP seats. There are also full season tickets for the NBA New York Knicks and New Jersey Nets, as well as optional playoff tickets. The seats are in the best seats in the first 5 rows." Lan listed her spoils one by one. Li Ji was sweating a little after listening to them. "Well, these tickets are not cheap, especially the VIP seats. Sometimes you can't buy good seats even if you have money, and sometimes you even have to pay a premium to buy them." No wonder Natasha looked bad today. It would be strange if she could be in high spirits after losing so much. Oh, by the way, there is also a ticket for the Mr. World Bodybuilding Finals, but I have no interest in watching bodybuilding, so I gave it back to Natasha. Lan remembered that she had won another bet, but she was not interested. Li Ji touched his chin. Well done. I think the main reason why Natasha didn't fight you to death is because of this. At least you didn't kill her and take away her favorite things." "What?" Lan was still a very pure child. She didn't understand what Li Ji was saying. She asked in confusion, "Is watching the bodybuilding competition so important to Natasha?" "Huh? The bodybuilding competition is not important, but the muscular bodies and beauty of those guys there are the key to attracting Natasha." Maybe Natasha thinks of it as a place to look for prey? When Li Ji was thinking about how to explain to Lan the importance of this matter to Natasha, the music suddenly became louder. At this time, Tony Stark, wearing a beautiful black suit, officially entered the venue, and his other good friend, Colonel Rhodes, walked onto the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for you to come to the venue and attend the wedding of Tony and Pepper. Ligi stopped talking to Lan, because Colonel Rhodes began to give a speech, which meant that the wedding ceremony was about to begin. P.S. Colonel Rhodes is the black man in the Iron Man story, a good friend of Tony, and also the driver of the Iron Patriot. Chapter 772. Wedding Ceremony. Tony Stark, my best friend in life. He is also my close comrade in arms. I feel at ease every time I fly the Warhawk in the sky. Colonel Rhodes began his affectionate speech on the stage. He needed to mobilize the atmosphere for the wedding. Because I know that the crystallization of Stark Industries Group is condensed in my aircraft equipment. And the creator of all this is Tony Stark. He has profoundly changed the form of war, keeping our country at the forefront of the world, and allowing our soldiers to defend the national territory and the safety of the people with more advanced countries. Scientist, Patriot. I think these titles are well deserved for Tony. Now he has put down the production of weapons, but he has not put down his responsibility for this country and the world. The heroic figure of Iron Man is active in every corner of the world, and Tony Stark is also deeply promoting the change of the world. As a good friend of Tony, especially on this special occasion, Colonel Rhodes can be said to be extremely praising Tony. All kinds of beautiful words are said without cost. Of course, although it is a bit exaggerated, at least what he said is still true. Tony had a smile on his face, indicating that he was very satisfied with Colonel Rhodes' speech. It was indeed right to invite the best military pilot and part-time spokesman to preside over his wedding. He is changing the world, but maybe Tony Stark is tired of changing the world. He has been doing this since he was 20 years old. It gets boring when you do fun things too much, so he did something that I thought would never happen to him. He is getting married. Colonel Rhodes said in a joking tone, he not only wants to change the world now, but also wants to profoundly change his life. I guess you all should have understood what kind of person Tony is. Colonel Rhodes said this teasingly, causing laughter from the audience. Tony made a please, don't be funny expression. Sometimes, it is more difficult to make up your mind to change your fixed life than to change the world. Because you will find that every morning someone will drag you out of bed when you are snoring and let you eat a nutritious breakfast. You can no longer use beer or whiskey to sober up in the morning. The only thing you can drink is probably black coffee. Colonel Rhodes talked about everything after marriage humorously. Of course you can't spend money recklessly, because the household finances need to be managed. You can't hang out in the bar at midnight and chat up pretty girls, because you don't know when a fierce woman will rush in and drag you away. You can't stay up late to watch football with your friends, because it might wake up the baby in the nursery. What Colonel Rhodes said caused a burst of booing from the audience. Someone said in a mean way, Tony, after hearing this, do you still want to get married? Tony on the stage didn't answer. He just shrugged with a strange curve at the corner of his mouth. Colonel Rhodes pointed in the direction where the speaker was just now. Hey, brother, I think you are probably not married yet, otherwise you wouldn't ask such a question. Although what I just said will make some people who are afraid of marriage feel even more frightened, marriage has another face. When you manage it well, it will show extraordinary tenderness. When you are in the cold night, there is another person's body temperature to warm you. When you are lonely, you can always find another half to listen to you. When you are at the lowest and darkest point in your life, there is another person to accompany you and wait for the dawn. Colonel Rhodes spoke slowly, in a low and powerful voice. You will have a brand new life, lovely children. There is a goal you are willing to fight for, and this goal is called family. And forming a family is a brand new beginning of life. This requires courage and responsibility. Carrying a family is no easier than carrying the whole world. Because to your family, you are the whole world. No matter if you are a superhero or a top billionaire, when you shoulder the hardships of life for your significant other, you are the most precious wealth in the world. When you handmake a unique toy for your child with expectations, you are his, her, greatest superhero. Husband, father. Are you ready to take your responsibility, Tony? The whole audience fell silent. Colonel Rhodes asked Tony the last sentence. Tony felt more nervous than ever before, and he felt his throat tightened as never before. It was like being held by a big hand, which made Tony more nervous than facing a group of terrible villains. Everyone focused their eyes on Tony. Tony faced everyone's gaze, and he couldn't help but take a few breaths, his fists unconsciously clenched and then relaxed. His heartbeat accelerated so much that even Jarvis thought Tony was going to have a heart attack. The whole place was silent for more than 10 seconds. In this heavy silence, Tony finally spoke, "I'm ready." After saying this, Tony felt like he had just finished a war. He breathed a sigh of relief. He finally didn't back down at the last moment. The audience applauded, and Lee Ji even blew a loud whistle. The host, Colonel Rhodes, also announced loudly in this atmosphere, "Then we need to invite our bride to come in." At the other end of the venue, the Angel Flower girls played by Mindy and Laura came out first. They wore white dresses with lace edges, wreaths on their heads, and flower baskets in their hands. Mindy's beautiful blonde hair contrasted with Laura's soft chestnut hair. Although both girls were smiling, Mindy's expression looked much more lively, while Laura looked a little cold, like another kind of Lolita with a cold smile. The difference between the two flower girls on the left and the right was very cute. Many audience members in the venue couldn't help but take their mobile phones to take pictures of the two girls. Lee Ji, who knew the personalities of the two girls well, said to Lan in a low voice, "When did they become so obedient?" Lan shrugged her shoulders. Just after Tony promised to give them each an unlimited Lego toy pickup voucher and an unlimited Global Disneyland play voucher, the two of them became as obedient as cats. Lee Ji said after a long time, "Big deal." Well, Lee Ji prayed silently in his heart, hoping that Tony would not go bankrupt for this. Behind the flower girl angel was Peibo, who was dressed as a bride. Today, she didn't have the usual capable feeling. The white wedding dress brought out her gentle and moving side, which surprised that Pepper also had such a feminine side. The bouquet in her hand was also specially treated, so that Peibo, who is allergic to pollen, could hold it with peace of mind. In fact, all the flowers in the entire venue were treated in this way. Peibo's father took Peibo's hand and walked his daughter to Tony step by step. The slightly plump but elegant old man said seriously before handing Pepper's hand to Tony, "Don't let me down." Tony also answered seriously, "I will." The witness, Dr. Ethan, was ready. He stood on the swearing-in platform and read out the lines that had been repeated countless times by countless people to the newlyweds. "Are you willing to be Pepper's, Tony's, husband, wife? Whether in good times or bad, rich or poor, healthy or sick, happy or sad, I will always love her, him, cherish her, him, and be faithful to her, him, forever." It turned out that when the scene that he had seen countless times in movies and TV happened to himself, Tony, Pepper, felt for the first time that these words were so sacred. Looking at Pepper's beautiful eyes, Tony said affectionately, "I do. I, Tony, beg Miss Virginia Pepper to be my wife from today. My partner in life, my only love. I will give all my trust to you, laugh with you, cry with you, and will be loyal to you forever. I am ready, no matter the future is good or bad, I will go hand in hand with you. You are me, and I am you. Will you be my bride?" Pepper listened to Tony's oath. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She had a smile on her face but her tone was a little choked. "I am willing to be your bride, Tony Stark, and stay with you from now on. I will always stand behind you, and I will be your last support no matter when and where. Wherever you are, there I will be. If you stay, I will stay. If you move forward, I will move forward too. What you cherish will also be what I cherish. Your relatives are also my relatives. When you die, I will be buried with you. For the rest of my life, never leave." Tony Stark, who always had a frivolous image, showed his unprecedented serious side. His face was firm, and he slowly knelt on one knee. "Please let me put on the wedding ring for you." Peter, who had been standing quietly behind Tony, quickly took out the ring, and Pepper also stretched out his right hand. The ring was slowly put on Pepper's hand. When Pepper also put the wedding ring on Tony, the whole venue applauded. Cheers, whistles, and some hoarse and meaningless shouts. Pepper looked around. She would probably never forget today for the rest of her life. Today is the most beautiful moment in her life. The single women watching the ceremony below the stage may have been infected, and even Lan couldn't help but say softly, "It's great." Lee Ji gently bumped Lan's shoulder. "If you are envious, go and pick up the bride's wedding bouquet. Maybe you will be the next one to get married." Lan looked at Lee Ji and smiled, full of charm. P.S. Daily ticket request. Chapter 773. Who is so stupid? Tony Stark and Virginia Pepper are happy at this moment. Lee Ji doesn't know whether Pepper and Tony really get together in the original story. Or maybe the love sea is in turmoil, or even the ship of love capsizes. Because Li Ji intervened in this world and tried to wave his butterfly wings, it led to a huge change in the direction of the world. And this change in the world has become something no one can predict. Just like Tony and Pepper's wedding. When flowers filled the sky and Pepper and Tony both had a happy smile on their faces, Li Ji felt a little relieved. Maybe he didn't do anything particularly great, but at least he changed the direction of some people's lives. And this direction looks very good at the moment. For Li Ji, the sense of accomplishment of changing the fate of his friends is no less than the sense of accomplishment brought by changing the world. Life is already too difficult, so you always have to find some fun. Life is long and bitter, but there is honey occasionally. Being a superhero is not an easy thing. Being able to experience the perfection and sweetness of life, even if it is only for a moment, is eternal. Li Ji smiled at Lan, who was trying to grab the bouquet from the bride with other female companions. Life should be like this, isn't it? Life shouldn't be like this. This is damned, it's terrible. Schmidt has broken several cups in his hand. He doesn't want his current life at all. Originally, Schmidt was still waiting for the news that Tony Stark's wedding banquet was destroyed. As long as there were large-scale casualties, he would have a follow-up method to start implementing the plan. But now everything is not going according to plan, which makes people feel terrible. Tony Stark's wedding went smoothly without any trouble. He and Pepper completed the wedding, and because of Iron Man's wedding, Tony once again became the focus of global media pursuit. Time magazine once again selected him as the cover character and listed in detail all the stories about Iron Man Tony Stark. Tony's wedding was over, and Li Ji finally got his ring back, but he was dragged away by Dr. Banner before he had a chance to try on the ring. He needed to discuss with Li Ji how to vent Betty's anger. The technology island, which was only half completed, was not very suitable for a large group of people to play here for a long time, not to mention that the people who came to Tony's wedding were actually very busy. So basically everyone dispersed on the second day of the wedding. Tony and Pepper didn't have anything to do on their honeymoon holiday. Please, people in this position have the responsibility of this position. They can't enjoy a leisurely holiday and carefree play like ordinary people. Life can't be perfect. On the second day of the wedding, the two had to rush back to New York to prepare. Many things were waiting for the two to deal with, about strengthening the economic siege against Hydra, and the throw that Dr. Ethan was looking for. Ethan's Zodiac needed an investment to expand its scale. These things all needed to be dealt with. Life is not so leisurely. The seemingly calm wedding ended, but there were undercurrents behind it. Li Ji's suspicion of Dr. Ethan did not decrease. He always felt that Dr. Ethan's eyes were strange when he looked at the ring on Tony's hand that day. He seemed to recognize something. As for Ethan's statement that no one could find his original hiding place, Li Ji believed that there were indeed people in this world who had entire reconnaissance capabilities that could avoid Iron Man's search, but this person was definitely not Ethan. He was just an ordinary scholar, not a trained agent. Li Ji always felt that he had revealed something in his words and deeds, but he could not catch it. Nick Fury's Thunder agent had already helped to track him down in the dark. The Winter Soldier had already joined the team. Li Ji owed Nick a favor for this matter. However, Li Ji hoped that this was just his own suspicion. In addition, he could not tell Tony about this matter directly and ask him to stop investing in Ethan or something. This was impossible. He did this because of his own suspicion? What's the difference between this and making a false accusation? And if it is not handled properly, it will affect the relationship between the three people. As for Dr. Banner's girlfriend Betty, she ran to a farm in the countryside of Oregon because she was in a bad mood. Li Ji reminded Banner, since someone can leak information to Ms. Betty, you must be careful about her safety. What if someone comes to catch her and threaten you? This sentence reminded Banner, so Dr. Banner invited Li Ji and Lan to go to a farm in the countryside of Oregon for a few days. Li Ji agreed. Lan, who had just grabbed the bridal bouquet at Tony's wedding, was in a good mood. She was tired of staying in the big city of New York. It would be nice to go to Oregon to ride horses, and she could stay there until she returned to New York before Christmas. However, the facts proved that Li Ji's decision was right. When Lan opened the portal and sent the three of them to the happy farm in the countryside of Oregon, General Ross's property, they happened to meet a few people who wanted to catch Betty. And these people were actually sent by Schmidt. Because the wedding was not ruined, Schmidt was already very annoyed. He gave this order as if he was in a daze, to catch Betty and put the blame on others. When Li Ji, Banner and Lan just arrived at the Happy Farm in Oregon. They happened to see several men in black tying up Betty and trying to put her in the car. Banner was instantly furious when he saw all this. He was really angry, but he didn't transform into the Hulk. Or it was a good thing that he didn't transform into the Hulk, otherwise the Hulk with only 50 kilograms of strength could do nothing but act cute. Dr. Banner, who was angry but rational, rushed towards the group of people like an arrow from a string. Li Ji counted that there were about 30 of them, all of whom were well equipped and had excellent skills. If they were placed in the army, they would probably be the kings of soldiers, but in the end they were all beaten away by Banner one by one. It was as if these people were not real people, but human-shaped balloons. Li Ji watched all this, and then whispered to Lan, which organization or individual is so stupid? How dare they touch Dr. Banner's woman? Lan shrugged, looking in the direction of the mighty Dr. Banner. I don't know, but there are probably not many such stupid organizations or individuals in the world. Maybe you can think of a way. Li Ji chuckled twice. Chapter 774 Betty's Collapse. The guys who wanted to kidnap Betty had a miserable end. Anyway, how strong is the angry Dr. Banner? Li Ji guessed that in terms of physical attribute attacks, Banner is probably the first person on Earth. Especially Dr. Banner did not transform into the Hulk, but was a scientist in an absolutely rational mode. This gives Banner the advantages of the Hulk, but without the terrible shortcomings of the Hulk after losing his mind. After all, it is very scary to beat the enemy without distinguishing between friends and enemies after the Hulk loses his mind. Especially the Hulk does not know how to control his own strength. Even a small splash damage is fatal to many people. The Red Hulk has proved this in the last New York battle. Li Ji was always attracting the hatred of the Red Hulk and attracted him all the way to the suburbs. The main attacks of the Red Hulk were directed at Li Ji, and even so, the streets where the Red Hulk passed were in a mess. The splash damage alone destroyed dozens of blocks and affected many places in New York City. Some blocks are still under reconstruction, and the government has paid a lot of money for this. As for Banner, he can perfectly control his strength. So although the fate of those kidnappers was tragic, not all of them were killed by Banner. He was planning to get some information from these people. But his plan was doomed to fail. This group of mercenaries who came to carry out the mission looked like dead soldiers. After the mission failed, they detonated the micro-bombs in their bodies by themselves, or perhaps the mastermind detonated them behind the scenes, and directly released a pulse in the brain, causing brain death. Dr. Banner did not get any information, and in the end he could only be indignant at the bodies on the ground. Dr. Banner, you should take Miss Betty back first. I'll take care of it here. Li Ji said to Dr. Banner. He frowned at the corpses on the ground. Betty looked a little scared, and she was trembling in Dr. Banner's arms. Banner nodded to Li Ji with a sullen face. Li Ji motioned Lan to follow Banner into the farm. I'll take care of this. Banner turned to Lan and said, come in first, I'll prepare some drinks for you. General Ross's Happy Farm is still very large. He bought this 5-hectare farm a few years ago. It was originally intended to be a place for retirement and rest. But unexpectedly, General Ross, as the commander of the Homeland Defense of the East Coast of North America, finally lost his integrity and did not retire with honor to enjoy his old age. Instead, he became the Red Hulk in the end. Others would not care that General Ross made such a choice to defend New York. At that time, New York was attacked by the Mandarin's dragon troops and the Star Fleet had not arrived yet. General Ross is a patriot. He made such a choice to protect this country and its citizens. But his final result can only be to stay in an unknown black prison. It is hard to say whether he is doing research or being studied by others. After all, the Red Hulk is not a force that can be easily let go. Is this fair to General Ross? Others don't care, or even if they know, they will pretend to turn a blind eye. If there is anyone in this world who cares deeply about General Ross, it is his daughter, Betty Ross. Before, her boyfriend was hunted down because of the mutant Hulk, and then her father, the mutant Hulk, was arrested. Now she was attacked and kidnapped for no reason, and Betty was in a terrible mood. She was unhappy in various aspects, and this pressure almost made her collapse. So many years, Bruce, so many years. Betty cried in a low voice almost hysterically, I thought life would always turn around, Bruce. Life tortured me again and again, and I survived again and again. But I am really too tired, too tired. Why do I have to live so hard? Why? Betty cried very sadly, and Dr. Banner could only hold her and say softly, It's okay, it's okay. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Lan could only stand far away with a cup of hot milk, watching Banner holding his girlfriend and listening to Betty crying softly. Lan wanted to escape a little, but at this time Li Ji came back. He had already dealt with the aftermath. He walked into the farm hut, gently put his arm around Lan's shoulders, and whispered in her ear, "What happened?" Lan's lips moved, and she answered softly, "Miss Betty is about to collapse. The pressure over the years has almost crushed her. Especially after she learned who had modified the parameters of the gamma bomb, which led to the origin of the Hulk. She can no longer support herself." Lan said all these when Betty was weeping and whispering just now. Betty was very emotional, her facial muscles were twitching, and her eyes were filled with tears. Her eyes stared into Banner's. "Bruce, I know it's selfish for me to say this, but I really wish that the experiment had killed you directly. This way I at least have a reason to die with you, and I can at least be relieved of all the pain. But because you didn't die, I can't die. I know you needed someone's support and company at the time to be able to persevere and continue to live. Although you haven't replied to any of my messages, I still use the communication method that only the two of us know to send you messages." Betty's originally delicate and beautiful face is now full of tears, whether it's Morse code or the secret code between the two of us. "I always tell you that things will turn around, and we can be together if we live. Life will always get better. Even though I know that maybe all this is just self-deception. But I can only do this. Because you are my love, I can't give up you. But now I'm tired, I'm really tired. I've spent nearly 10 years waiting for you, and I don't know how long my father will take." Betty was almost desperate. "I don't want to find out who is responsible, but it's hard for me to cheer up. I've had enough." A big part of the reason why Betty was so emotional was that she had a vent for the resentment that she couldn't vent before, but she couldn't vent it. In the past, Betty always thought that Banner himself was the one who caused the tragedy. She couldn't blame her boyfriend and could only encourage him to be strong. Later, the source of General Ross's mutation was also due to the appearance of Hulk, Green. But when she knew that all this was done by the megalomaniac Tony Stark, she was really angry. She wanted to tear Tony into pieces in anger, but her reason told her not to do so. Because Tony Stark is extremely important to this world. He has promoted many reforms in this world. It can be said that many things would not have been possible without Tony. Betty is not a shallow little woman. She is a woman with a broader mind. So on the one hand, she hates Tony Stark very much, but on the other hand, reason tells her not to do stupid things. The stone that had been weighing on her heart for all these years suddenly collapsed without support. Coupled with the kidnapping incident as a trigger, Betty's emotions completely collapsed in time and space, which was completely normal. Because no matter how strong she is still just an ordinary woman. What she said made Banner at a loss, not knowing how to comfort her. At this time, Li Ji quietly walked behind Betty, and the neutral and peaceful Dane Tathagata key was passed to Betty's back through Li Ji's palm, and spread to her whole body. This warm current made Betty feel like taking an extremely comfortable warm water bath. Because of this comfort, she began to relax slowly, and her emotions gradually eased down. Li Ji gently pressed on her neck, and Betty fainted heavily. Banner was relieved. He looked at Li Ji and forced a smile. "Thank you." Li Ji waved his hand. "You're welcome. Thank me after things are settled. If possible, I want to go horseback riding with Lan first. I need to think about it." Chapter 775. Are you willing to save me? December is not a good time to ride a horse because the weather has started to get cold. Although it hasn't snowed in Oregon yet, the farm area already seems to be a bit dull. This is mainly because all kinds of animals, including birds, have begun to prepare for winter. The empty farm area seems cold and deserted, and the other farm is quite far away from it. So riding a horse in this weather feels lonely. But Li Ji and Lan didn't care, because they were not in the mood to ride a horse. Although the weather was fine today, the winter sun shone on their bodies and felt warm. The two rode two smooth brown horses side by side, wandering and looking at the fields that had withered in winter. The breeze gently blew through Lan's hair, disturbing her hair. She gathered her hair, took out a rubber band from her pocket, and tied it into a ponytail casually. "Do you think it's very hard to be the woman behind the superhero?" Lan was riding a horse and looking at the scenery, and suddenly asked Li Ji this question, which caught Li Ji off guard. "Why do you suddenly want to ask this question?" Li Ji didn't know how to answer for a moment. Lan touched the mane of the horse under him, Because I saw two women in completely different situations these 2 days. Pepper and Betty. I also saw two different men, Tony and Banner. Before Pepper's wedding, I talked to her for a long time in the ladies' building. We talked about many things about her and Tony. Including when she just became Tony's secretary, she helped Tony quit drinking. Then she helped him deal with all kinds of messy things in life. Then she helped him manage the company and be responsible for financial balance. She also had to calculate the final cost of the things that Iron Man did, whether they were good or bad, and whether these costs were within the controllable range. Pepper is doing her best to prevent Tony from going bankrupt. The stories Lan told were a little heavy in her tone, but this was indeed the truth and an issue that could not be avoided. Liji did not interrupt because he knew Lan had not finished. Sure enough, Lan sighed and said, "Pepper and Tony are married. This should be a happy ending, right? But why do I feel like she is stuck in a quagmire? Especially when she made her wedding vows, I felt like she would need to help Tony Stark with his aftermath for the rest of her life." Lan's feeling was not an illusion. Given Tony's personality, Pepper would probably need to help him with his aftermath for the rest of his life if she became his wife. Tony was like a child who could never grow up. He was curious about everything, but he was overly sensitive. He needed someone to protect the softest part of his heart. The Miss Betty I saw today is another type. She doesn't look as capable and strong as Pepper, but she is more gentle as water. It is this gentleness that has allowed her to persist for so many years without collapsing until today. Before this, it was Miss Betty who encouraged and supported Dr. Banner. That gave him the opportunity to conquer his inner demons and finally walk out of the nightmare of the Hulk. He became the new Dr. Banner again. Miss Betty used her tolerance to interpret what is called the strength of water. Liji nodded, "Yes, you are right. If it weren't for the strength and support of these two women, perhaps we would not see the current Iron Man in Dr. Banner today. Perhaps one of them died of excessive drinking and indulgence, causing his talent to dissipate. The other may not be able to escape from his own nightmare, and regard all this as self-punishment, and finally even give up on himself and completely exile himself. What kind of person a person can become is not only because of what kind of person he, she, is, but also because of what kind of people he, she, will meet in his, her, life." Lan suddenly felt a little upset, and she galloped for a while. Liji followed closely behind. Lan stopped after running at least 2 kilometers. She turned her head and looked at Liji with deep eyes. "I mean, if we are a little selfish. If these women had never met these men, did it fall into the gentle trap they set? Instead, they started another life. Wouldn't they be happier? They don't have superpowers, and they don't have the dream of saving the world. They are more fragile and more vulnerable than their significant other. If they met another man at another time, there were not so many twists and turns, just a peaceful life, a light happiness, would they live better?" Lan interpreted what she had seen in the past 2 days from her own woman's perspective. She didn't know why she felt inexplicably irritable in her heart. This irritability even made her inexplicably want to escape from this world. Liji listened to Lan's complaints, and he slowly rode his horse closer to Lan. When the distance was close enough, he jumped on the horse and rode with Lan. Liji gently hugged Lan, and Lan did not refuse. "She just took you out of your mind." Liji sniffed the fragrance wafting from Lan's hair and whispered in Lan's ear, "Maybe you were right. Even if she hadn't met Tony Stark, Pepper Potts would still be Pepper Potts. She would not change because of whether she met Tony or not. She would still be an outstanding strong woman and shine in this world. And the same goes for Miss Betty. If she hadn't met Bruce Banner, she would still be the gentle and beautiful female scientist. She would definitely have many suitors. Maybe then she would not be the Miss Betty who is crying in Dr. Banner's arms today. Instead, she would be Miss Betty who is riding a horse and laughing on this farm with another elegant man, or maybe she would be the wife of someone." Lan lay on Liji's chest somewhat weakly, looking into the distance. "Yeah, isn't that kind of life good? They are just mortals. Why should they bear more responsibilities than superheroes, and even suffer? Maybe it's the different division of responsibilities." Liji suddenly said something that surprised Lan. She sat up straight and turned to look at Liji. She was a little confused. "Huh? There are many people in this world who have different jobs. Some are responsible for cooking, while others are responsible for takeout. There are super criminals responsible for destruction, while superheroes are responsible for saving. Superheroes are responsible for saving and changing the world, perhaps because of responsibility, perhaps because of interest, Or perhaps because of ideals? Li Ji said in a low voice. Lan looked at Li Ji and asked, what about the women behind the heroes? What are they responsible for? Li Ji smiled. Superheroes are responsible for saving the world, and the women behind them are responsible for saving superheroes. Just like a car cannot run without gasoline, a hero without support is lonely. Lan listened to Li Ji's words and nodded silently. She sighed heavily. Li Ji gently hugged her and whispered in her ear, so, are you willing to save me, Lan? Lan looked back at Li Ji, with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Before she opened her mouth to answer, Li Ji's face was getting closer and closer to her. Lan could even feel the heat and softness of Li Ji's lips. Okay, I won't open the portal this time, just this once. Lan blushed a little. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.